Sound check 1, 2, 3.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Public Works Committee meeting for today, July 27, 2026. We have quorum present for today's meeting, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. In chambers, we have Councillor Beattie, Councillor Cooper, Councillor Maureen Wilson, Councillor McMeekin, Councillor Crutch, Councillor Alex Wilson, Councillor Huang, Councillor Kassar, and joining us virtually, we have Councillor Francis and Councillor Taddison. Thank you all and welcome. Reminder that all your electronic devices to be switched to a non-audible function during committee meetings. So I'm just going to give everybody a quick 10 seconds to double check your phones and make sure that they aren't going to ping or beep or ring while we're going on in our committee meeting. So please do that. And moving on, we will approve the agenda. Over to Elsie McIntosh. Are there any changes to our agenda today?
Yes, Chair Nan, there are two changes to the agenda. Item 2.1, National Rail Safety Week, is being moved to the August 31st meeting. That's the ceremonial activity. And item 9.3 will be moved up in the agenda to be heard following item 6, delegations.
Thank you. May I please have a mover and seconder to approve the agenda as amended? Moved by Councillor Alex Wilson, seconded by Councillor Taddison. Thank you both. All those in favor, show a hand vote. And that carries. On to declarations of interest. Are there any committee members? Seeing none, we'll move on to adoption of our minutes from our previous meeting, which was held on July 6th. Mover and seconder to adopt the minutes. Thank you, Councillor Crutch, seconded by Councillor Huang. Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, then it's a show of hand votes. All those in approval, voting in favor. Any opposed? The minutes carry. Next up on our agenda is delegations. Before we begin our delegations for today, members are reminded that questions of our delegates are for clarification purposes only and not for debate. A note to our delegates that you have 5 minutes to complete your delegation in person and virtually. At the 4-minute mark, you'll hear a little ding, and that's just to give you a reminder. You've got about a minute left to wrap up your comments. And please don't walk away right away from the podium at the end of your delegation. Committee members might have some questions for you. I'll let you know if there are questions and aren't questions, but do just say paused at the podium when you're done your remarks. So first up, we have 6.1 delegation from Sasha Pervaniak. Sorry? Oh, that one's been withdrawn. My apologies. Next up is 6.2, delegation respecting report PW 26037, proposed permanent closure and sale of a portion of untraveled road allowance, Overfield Street in Dundas, Ward 13, item 9.1 on today's agenda. We have 2 in-person delegates. First up is Nancy Greenspoon. Nancy, as you make your way to the podium, there is a little button on the podium to either make it go lower or higher. Please adjust it to your height preference. And then you'll see a red light for the microphone. And once that red light on the microphone is on, you're ready to begin. Please proceed.
It's on? Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. My name is Nancy Greenspoon, and I own the property at 54 Tally-Ho Drive, adjacent to the road allowance. I would like to provide a brief update since the last meeting. For those of you who were not present previously, this is the land under discussion. The last time I was here, I discussed the impact to drainage, wildlife corridor, neighborhood impact, heritage black walnut tree, busy intersection with many elderly people out and about from St. Joseph's Villa. Since then, I retained an independent arborist to assess the property. Their findings underscore the environmental and community importance of this land, which I believe should be carefully considered in your decision-making. The arborist is Nick Lawson, who is a certified arborist in Ontario and works for the City of Toronto Landscape Division. You should have received a copy of his report in your agenda, but I would like to summarize some of his findings now for you. So I'm speaking on what he has written. It is my professional opinion that the unassumed municipal right-of-way adjacent to 54 Tally-Ho cannot accommodate residential development without causing a structural failure or biological death of the subject boundary tree, which is that tree. The potential construction would require civil excavations that directly violate the City of Hamilton's tree protection guidelines by heavily encroaching upon the tree's critical root zone. We respectfully urge the City of Hamilton Planning and Forestry Divisions to deny development approvals for this specific parcel based on the following municipal frameworks. Number 1, Bylaw 15-125 compliance. The development cannot physically proceed without violating Section 3.2 of the Bylaw 15-125, which explicitly prohibits heavy equipment operation and material storage over root systems within a public trees designated protection zone. Number 2, targeted canopy protection, and this is Ward 13. The State of the Urban Forest Report specifically identifies Ward 13, which is Dundas, as having suffered a 1.7 canopy decline, the sharpest loss in the entire municipality. Number 3, the absence of viable tree protection zone. There is insufficient spatial clearance to install standard undisturbed municipal fencing barrier, which would allow for the structural foundations. His recommendations: rather than altering this environmentally sensitive parcel for residential use, we recommend that the city retain this land as permanent green corridor. This aligns perfectly with the urban Hamilton official plan objectives to preserve unassumed right-of-ways as natural infrastructure, safeguarding established root systems, preventing local storm runoff, and protecting Dundas's vulnerable canopy, as well as the designated conservation area. Based on the review of the site geometry, allowable building footprints under Dundas zoning bylaw 3581-86 and safety clearances mandated by the Ontario Building Code, residential development on this parcel would completely necessitate the destruction and removal of the primary black walnut tree. This tree features an extensive canopy spread of 9.9 meters, laterally covering approximately 2/3 of the unassumed right-of-way. City of Hamilton's natural heritage planning guidelines protect trees to the outermost canopy edge, defined as the drip line. The subject black walnut is an irreplaceable legacy tree, likely predating modern local subdivision elements. A visual localized inventory identified 7 mature trees in the immediate vicinity. Morphological traits and proximity strongly establish that the subject tree serves as the parent seed source for this subcanopy. Removing this central asset effectively halts natural regeneration and alters the local forest genetics. To conclude, I ask each of you to come and see the land that is the road allowance and make the decision to leave it as is, a beautifully landscaped and maintained part of our community, rather than it becoming part of the real estate portfolio. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate
Any questions?
First up, we have Councillor Alex Wilson.
Thank you so much, Nancy, for coming. My apologies for not being here the last time you were out
That's
to detail on this, but I really do appreciate not just your passion as a resident, bringing that insight, but also doing some exploratory work yourself, bringing in that consulting. I think it speaks to, how important this plot, this trees are to the neighborhood, and how, a community is made up more than just parcels of land kind of coming together. The report recommendations have changed a bit since that last May meeting. And so I just want to maybe focus on the closure of the road allowance and then what happens next to the land as 2 separate bits, and just ask your feedback, because I think it's important to hear how residents are feeling. I've heard quite clearly you're not necessarily opposed to the closing of the road allowance, but you'd like this to retain in city ownership as the next step. You wouldn't like this land to be disposed of for another development.
No, not at all. I agree. I understand it's not ever going to be a road allowance, but it's a natural piece of land, and it's very hard to see from the survey what actually it is. And so that's why I recommend everybody come out and drive by. You wouldn't even, it's all trees and animals, and you wouldn't even think of it as anything other than that. So you should take a look. I just have more pictures, but it was hard to get them going.
That's okay. I really do appreciate you coming, and I think you tied the links to the biodiversity strategy and some of those other city strategies that we're talking about as well in consideration of that. When we think about making that kind of decision at a future date, looking at some of those factors, I know part of the direction for this is looking at a potential connection to the existing kind of trails behind some of the properties. What would it take to maintain a connection there, even if that is a long-term goal? Are there other things that you think should be considered in terms of looking at, now that it's not going to be a road, we've maybe made that decision a little late, but we've decided, okay, we're not going to expand this road anymore. How do we complete this community? If that's the question, as opposed to, how do we sell this land, but how do we complete the community? What should happen here?
Yeah.
How do you think the city should ask that question, or how would you like you and your neighbors to be involved in the future?
My age, I just like things just the way they are. I'm not good on change, but I think the next delegate has some suggestions. I'm happy, content with everything the way it is, to be honest.
You'd be happy if the city assumed it, maintained it as kind of vacant
Well,
land?
we've maintained it between myself and the people who own 2 Walnut Grove. It's been maintained by us and the prior owners to us for over 50 years at our own expense. And we are still maintaining it. We are cutting the grass, fertilizing it, and it's all totally landscaped. And it looks really nice.
Thank you so
Come
much.
see. Anybody else?
There are no further questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Susanna Duft. Susanna, same note to you that you can lower or higher the delegation table as it suits you.
May I request an additional minute?
1 additional
Yes,
minute. Yeah, it will need a motion to do so. Moved by Councillor Alex Wilson, seconded by Welcome, Councillor Jackson. And that would be an electronic vote. It'll be the first vote of our committee meeting, so bear with us as the vote loads.
Each one will move as I click the screen? Yes. Okay, I can use the arrows as well. Back and forward. If I have problems, will you come over? Of course, I'm just right there. Okay, thank you.
Okay, it should be on your screens. Councillor Jackson had a big thumbs up earlier. I'll register that. Yep.
This is my minute.
Susanna, while we're waiting for the vote, there is a pitcher with water right over there in case you need it. Okay.
Thank you. But
All right, that carries, so you have the additional minute. Please proceed when you're ready and take your time.
Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. My name is Susanna Duff, the daughter of the historical owners of 2 Walnut Grove, the house abutting the road allowance. I'm pleased to be back today to provide historical context about this land and additional insight, having lived beside it for over half a century. First, I want to acknowledge it is part of the traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe, and today's decision must be grounded in the spirit of truth, reconciliation, and reciprocity. We have a collective responsibility to continue to steward this land in alignment with the city's climate action goals and urban Indigenous strategies. Nearly 5 years ago in 2021, an application was made by a private developer to close this road allowance for the purpose of a residential build. And this was internally stopped. It was denied. It didn't even get to a Public Works committee because Hamilton Conservation had concerns and recommended it to be kept in their interest. And I believe this set precedents. The only thing that changed from then to now is provincial legislation, specifically Bill 23, which has taken away Conservation's authority to speak specifically and fully on conservation. They could not address this time their concerns of the natural heritage area nor the biodiversity issues should this property be sold to developers as a buildable lot. Precedence was also set in 1995 when interest to purchase this land was made by previous owners of 54 Tally Ho. The town of Dundas then denied their application and offered that they could purchase half the property if and only if 2 Walnut Grove would purchase the other half. And this was to ensure that neither owner could monopolize the land and build upon it, as the town deemed this to be then an unbuildable lot. Neither owner purchased the property, and from then on the property's maintenance was shared by the abutting owners till present day. For over 20 years prior, my family were the sole stewards of this land, which included the responsibility to physically physically and financially maintain it as agreed to by the town of Dundas in 1974. But deeper history of this land is also a reminder of how we move forward today. We cannot separate the name of this property from its history. The Overfield name belongs to the early 19th century industrialists, and through a modern lens of truth and reconciliation, we recognize that their legacy was built on converting shared Indigenous ecosystems into private commerce and colonial infrastructure. If this committee votes to allow this public land be made available for private real estate development, we're repeating that exact same colonial pattern, taking a communal public asset and liquidating it for short-term private capital. True reconciliation of the land means breaking this cycle and recognizing that public green spaces are vital communal trusts, not real estate inventory waiting for the highest bidder. For over 5 decades, the abutting owners have meticulously and actively cared for this land at no cost to the municipality. It's become a naturalized buffer for our shared conservation lands, a micro-refuge well-traveled by hawks, owls, and migratory birds, fox, deer, coyote, while providing essential canopy coverage that aligns with Hamilton's own climate resiliency goals. When a municipality takes land originally designated for public use and attempts to liquidate it for private profit, it violates its commitment to be a better steward of the land and a fulfillment of the true intent of reconciliation and its alignment with the UIS along with all of its climate action strategies. Also, only the 2 abutting properties were notified of this application. Why no one else? Well, I understand it's the minimal requirement. It did ignore many other neighbors who should have known. The neighbors were then informed by Nancy and I and were aghast at the consideration of a possible build on such a small corridor. A petition of 30 signatures of the neighboring residents has been provided, and all petitioned were 100% in favor of preserving this land as open space, no build. While we understand real estate's explanation to close this road allowance and hold on to this asset, there's still no clear disposition strategy, but rather an ambiguous future on land zoned as R1. And then the city now retains this property for a feasibility analysis. What does that look like for maintenance and care? And then who assumes immediate and ongoing responsibility for its upkeep? What assurances can the city then provide that this land will not revert to an unmanaged, abandoned state, shifting an undue burden onto the surrounding neighborhood? Why are we breaking what's not broken? We must ask ourselves the same question that Councillor Beattie raised in our last discussions on this property. What problem are we trying to solve here? There is no problem to solve. The city already did their feasibility analysis in 2021 and rightly denied a private application to develop this land into a single detached dwelling. The city should not now do the administrative legwork to make privatization easier. Rather than liquidating this mature natural heritage area, give this land back to the area, transfer it to the Hamilton Conservation Authority, and leave it as is, as it has been for over 50 years. Or look to the Parks Master Plan and gift it to the community and create a legacy parkette, a small benched, inclusive, accessible area for an aging neighborhood. Hamilton's budget has already allocated $34 million to acquire and develop parkland using existing city-owned assets. Permanently preserving the Overfield Road allowance as open spaces where municipal policy meets real actionable reconciliation. In 2019, this council demonstrated leadership by endorsing Hamilton's Urban Indigenous Strategy, which explicitly binds our city to the truth and reconciliation calls to action under the core theme, the land. That strategy demands we repudiate the doctrine of discovery and stop treating local ecosystems as disposable crown commodities. If we vote to close and privatize this land, we violate that very promise of that framework. We cannot celebrate reconciliation on paper while continuing the mechanics of colonialization on the ground. So I urge this council to honor its commitment to the Urban Indigenous Strategy, reject the colonial fiction of terra nullius, and vote to protect the Overfield allowance as permanent open space. And I just want to draw your attention to a few items that are in the agenda. As you discuss this later, and I know there's not going to be a vote today, but just in the discussion process, item 6.2B1, the petition from the community. Item 6.2B2, under the title presentation, you'll find 4 items there. I have the community proposal, and I have a 15-point summary for consideration in your discussion, which includes summaries from previous meeting and to today's meeting. A visual sample of another community that also needs representation and protection, including the Jefferson salamander, who is a protected species. And a reminder of the parkette proposal that would bring our seniors out of an intersection and into a safe place, but also keeping them as part of our neighborhood. And finally, item 9.1A, correspondence that I sent on May 26th to Cynthia Graham, Ken Wheaton, Ian Miller, as well as the committee members regarding this proposal of the parkette idea. Thank you.
Thank you for your delegation, Delegate Duft. First up, we have Councillor Alex Wilson.
Thank you very much for your delegation, for coming out a second time, for sharing all your perspectives that you have. And just want to clarify that we will be voting on closing the road allowance today. It's just the secondary piece about a disposition is not on today's agenda. And so I just wanted to clarify that I've heard your point that you'd like this land to stay with the city and you like a disposition strategy that prioritizes the public realm. Are you concerned at all with closing the road allowance as it is, or are you more concerned with the next step and what happens with the land after that?
Thank you. Through the chair, absolutely. The concern is the next step. Closing it as a road allowance makes total sense. But the question is, there's many questions with that because of the maintenance that has been for over 50 years. And so that's where Nancy and I and the neighbors feel that just leaving it as is, it's not broken. Why are we trying to fix something that isn't? So, yeah.
And if the city were to take an active role in this site, you provided a proposal that you think would make sense for the community in the form of a little bit of a parkette. You've also said if disposition has to happen, you like to see it go to another public entity like the Conservation Authority, for example.
Certainly.
Is that a fair summary?
Absolutely, especially when in 2021, Conservation did speak to the natural heritage area and their concerns. And they did indicate that should it get sold to a developer, there will be a lot of hurdles down the road for that developer. And it would be a very sad thing that it would be in the possession of a builder and can't go anywhere with it, and then it goes to the OLT.
Thank you. In terms of that future process, the same question I asked the previous delegate was just, are there any expectations that you have as a neighbor in terms of how you'd like to be engaged in that secondary process around the lands, or some of the you've mentioned some considerations that you'd like to be a part of it, but just in terms of that engagement piece?
I would absolutely be honored to be a part of the next step. Having lived there, understanding the land very well, and also understanding the boundary of 2 Walnut Grove, because in the building of our property, the fencing actually is 6 feet in from the actual land. So visually, it doesn't look like it's part of it, but there are 6 feet. So in terms of a trail too, that might be assumed that could be the trail, but that is still property of 2 Walnut Grove. So that would be something very important to be noted.
Thank you very much for coming out today and for your passion, and also speaking to what's important, not just kind of yourself as a neighboring landowner, but I think taking a broader perspective and kind of what you're trying to protect there. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Through the chair, I just wanted to really reiterate that this is an aging neighborhood, and many of the people that were petitioned many of them were seniors, and many in great support of having something that will bring the seniors out of that intersection, because it's a 3-way stop. And when we have our residents from the villa coming down for their daily walk and resting in that spot, it can be a dangerous scenario, and it just gives them a place to feel like they're part of a neighborhood.
Thank you so much. Please stay at the podium. Second up is Councillor Beatty.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, thank you, Susanna. Thank you for using my own soundbite against me. I appreciate that. I say that in jest. That's totally, I'm just messing with you. Chair, I do have a question. There's a little bit of a preamble to get there, and it stems from, in the Ward 10 community that I serve, I think we had not an identical situation, but one that I would categorize as very similar. We had a former school site. It was zoned institutional. The City of Hamilton acquired the school site, but it was an environmentally sensitive area. Little strip on the front that faced onto a busy thoroughfare that is kind of, I don't know, not manicured, but it's maintained. But the back is all natural hazard lands. And you mentioned the Jefferson salamander. We have that same species in that area. It's a breeding ground for turtles as well. Really important ecological piece of property for the community. We ended up going down the route of conservation hazard zoning. The city has maintained ownership of it and will continue to do so. But in terms of the zoning, you offer the zoning for open space. And I'm wondering if there was any other considerations. And this is way cart before the horse. There's lots still coming. I'm just wondering, curious, what led you in that particular mind frame to go with that request, or if other zonings might also achieve the same thing, such as the conservation hazard property designation that we utilized in Ward 10 for that particular community asset. Any thoughts on that?
Thank you very much. And through the chair, I think ideally, Nancy, myself, would like to see it protected, whether it be through the conservation hazardous or through open space, as long as this land is not deemed a buildable lot as it hasn't been seen to be in 1995 and 2021.
Okay, and so there's not a specificity that it must be kept as open space, your general theme is, please retain this,
Yes.
please maintain public ownership, and give an
Yes.
allowance that would allow its continued use to continue.
Absolutely.
That's the gist of it. Okay,
Yes,
thank you so much for your
Thank you very
delegation.
much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, and that exhausts our speakers list. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for your delegation. At this point, may I please have a mover and seconder to receive the delegations? Moved by Councillor Alex Wilson, second by Councillor Beatty. All those in favor, it's a show of hand vote. Thank you, and that passes and carries. On to our amalgamated item of 9.3 PW 26069 Vision Zero Action Plan 2026 to 2032. Just a reference, we had amended the agenda to move this ahead. And so we're at that point in the agenda, and I'll turn it over to Director of Transportation to kick us off. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Nan, and thank you, committee members. So today, myself, Vince Frasser, Director of Transportation, along with Mike Field, Manager of Transportation Operations, and Chris Day, our Superintendent of Roadway Safety, will be presenting to you our next updated Vision Zero Action Plan 2026 to 2032. But before we do so, I ask your indulgence, if I may please recognize the Roadway Safety Unit, which have all come here today. These are the dedicated, critical staff that every day put in all of our roadway safety measures and have been doing so since we started Vision Zero in 2019, had a critical role in developing our new plan and will continue to do so. So they're made up of project managers, roadway technologists, and our education outreach coordinator. And they play, as I say, an invaluable, critical role to making sure that all of our roadway users are safe navigating our transportation workforce. So I just want to say thank you, everybody. Thank you. So we appreciate your indulgence. So let's start. So today we're going to present to you our updated Vision Zero Action Plan. It's a plan that will continue to be our strategic approach to improving roadway safety and continuing the momentum that we have achieved through the last 6 years. Now, before we do so, I just want to reintroduce what is Vision Zero. Vision Zero has been Hamilton's long-term commitment to roadway safety for all users, but it's founded on the belief that any loss of life for all users is unacceptable, that any fatal and serious injury collisions are preventable. Therefore, a transportation network needs to be designed and implemented to accommodate and recognize that there is human error, that there will be some mistakes, and that we reduce the likelihood and the severity of collisions from those human error. Now, Vision Zero is achieved through a coordinated and evidence-based approach predicated on engineering, education, enforcement, but as you will see, 2 more E's, engagement and evaluation. Vision Zero also recognizes that everyone, system designers, operators, the maintenance staff, and policymakers have a role to play for providing a safe transportation network for all travelers, regardless of their chosen mode of transportation, income level, gender, race, or physical abilities. So I'm now going to turn it over to Mike and Chris, who will continue discussing exactly how we got to where we are with respect to the plan and moving forward.
Thank you. I'm Mike Field, Manager of Transportation Operations in the Transportation Division. I have Chris Day, who's the Superintendent of Roadway Safety with me. We're just going to split the presentation today. I'm going to start, obviously, but I thought it'd be good to just revisit some of the achievements we've had with the previous Vision Zero Action Plan. Back in April, you may recall, we presented the 2023-2024 Annual Collision Report. And within that annual collision report, and since we, council approved the initial Vision Zero action plan back in 2019, we've seen a reduction of injury and fatalities by about 34%, from around 1,400 or 1,500 to under 1,000 injuries a year, which is a significant reduction. In 2024, injury collisions fell below 1,000 total for the first time in a long while. Definitely since I've been in the role, it's notable that it's below 1,000. And then under the city's Vision Zero framework, the most important message isn't simply the number of collisions that we have happening in the city, but it's whether those collisions happen to result in someone being injured or killed on the city's roadways. As Vince mentioned, our objective as a municipality is that there's none of that happening within the city, that no one's injured or killed on the city's roadways. And it's important to highlight that despite our progress, people are still being injured and killed on our roadways, so we still have work to do, and therefore why we're bringing forward the next version of the Vision Zero action plan. So as I mentioned, Council approved the first Vision Zero action plan in 2019 that established the strategic roadmap for roadway safety through to 2025. Over that period, the staff up there and a lot of others have worked on implementing that action plan, advancing roadway safety initiatives. We've monitored performance and reported progress to Council through things such as the annual collision report. As that planning horizon, the 2025 planning horizon of that initial report ended, we've been working on a comprehensive review of that program, and this included evaluating progress that we made, analyzing updated collision data, engaging stakeholders, and incorporating current best practices. The result is the updated Vision Zero action plan for 2026 through to 2032, which builds on the foundation that we established with the original plan and continues the long-term commitment to improving roadway safety as a municipality. This updated plan, it's important to know that it wasn't done in isolation. It reflects the experience gained through implementing the first action plan and incorporates several key inputs. We reviewed updated collision data across the term of the original Vision Zero action plan. We looked at all of the roadway safety trends during that time period, evaluated the implementation of that initial plan from 2019 to 2025. We undertook a good amount of stakeholder and public engagement through the process, and we incorporated best practices, including really cementing the safe systems approach within the new plan. The stakeholders, I know that's a term that's used quite often, but really within the action plan, they are partners. So if you reviewed the plan, you'll see that they are not just someone we talked to. They're people that we reached out and we want them to contribute to the plan and provide some input into the plan, but also actions for themselves depending on who they are. That's because the roadway safety equation is that one of a shared responsibility, that it's not just a transportation division endeavor, it's an endeavor that's much larger than us. So we need a lot of help to do that as a municipality to reach zero. We require partnerships with lots of other groups so that collectively we can come together and make the city a safer place and ultimately achieve the concept of Vision Zero. So that's reflected within the plan, that if you take a look at it, there's actions not listed just for the transportation division, but for many internal and external partners. All the inputs that we had from everyone, even our own, those were used to inform the development of that plan, as I mentioned, and that's what's before committee today. And then from there, I'm just going to go over to Chris now. Chris is going to go over some of the content of the plan itself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Day, Superintendent of Roadway Safety. Just before I get started, I also wanted to acknowledge our key counterparts over there at the Hamilton Police Services for joining us to support the plan today. So thank you. The action is organized as a strategic framework that provides clear direction for the city's roadway safety program from 2026 to 2032. It begins with a vision, mission, and goal that establishes long-term direction for the program. The vision describes the future transportation system that the city is working towards, while the mission defines how we intend to achieve the vision through collaboration, innovation, education, cultural change, and safe systems design. The goal provides a measurable outcome for the plan by targeting a sustained downward trend in fatal collisions and 20% reduction in injury collisions over the life of the action plan. Supporting this strategic direction are 4 identified emphasis areas, as well as safety management countermeasures. These emphasis areas represent the roadway safety issues that were identified through the collection of data analysis, stakeholder engagement, technical review as the priority areas where the city will focus its efforts to achieve the greatest impact on reducing fatal and injury collisions. Road safety management countermeasures encompass a broad range of tasks and functions that are administrative, logistical, and operational, which are essential for the execution of the plan. Under the plan, resources will be directed towards these priorities to support the effective implementation. The action plan identifies 91 countermeasures that present specific actions, initiatives, programs, policies, and infrastructure improvements. Together, the 91 countermeasures represent the implementation strategy for achieving the plan's vision, mission, and goal. The countermeasures include 39 that we are currently doing now and plan to continue to do so, 34 existing initiatives that we plan to expand or enhance, and 18 new initiatives that will be introduced over the life of the plan. They are organized under the 4 emphasis areas and also include roadway safety management countermeasures, and were developed using implementation experience from the 2019-2025 action plan, updated collision data, stakeholder engagement, and current best practices. Finally, the action plan establishes performance objectives that define how implementation and progress will be measured. Results will be monitored, reported annually to Council, supported accountability, transparency, and continuous improvement. Implementation of the plan will be supported through existing budgets, additional investments, and will be introduced through the annual budget process for Council's consideration. The action plan includes an implementation framework that recognizes that successful delivery requires more than identifying countermeasures. Effective implementation depends on a coordinated approach built on 3 key pillars. The first is governance, providing leadership through a Vision Zero subcommittee and embedding roadway safety across the organization to support coordinated decision-making. The second is implementation, which focuses on using ongoing data and analysis to inform decisions, prioritizing countermeasures based on new and risk, and delivering communications, education initiatives to support safer road user behavior. The pillars is accountability, ensuring that the implementation is monitored, evaluated, and reported to Council on an ongoing basis, supporting transparency, continuous improvement, and evidence-based decision-making. Together, these 3 pillars provide the governance, accountability, and decision-making framework needed to support the implementation of the Vision Zero action plan. So in closing, the committee is being asked for 2 things. 1, to approve the new Vision Zero action plan that will be used as a city's strategic framework for roadway safety moving forward. And 2, report back on establishing a formal Vision Zero subcommittee. So thank you.
Good. Thank you.
So that concludes our presentation for committee today.
Thank you. So we'll open it up to questions on the presentation. I will also entertain questions on the report, but if you first have ones for the presentation, please do so. So first up, we have Councillor Crutch, followed by Councillor Huang, Councillor Kassar, and then Councillor Maureen Wilson.
Thank you very much, and congratulations on bringing that number down. It does matter, and some of the things I've seen happen in the last 4 years have contributed to that for sure. So thank you for that work. The number one thing I see downtown that's had a really big impact on the way that pedestrians move has been how you've been using interval phasing at lighting. So leading interval phasing specifically for cyclists and pedestrians, and no turns on red, those kinds of, the combination of those 2 things alone, just along the Main Street corridor, has dramatically improved safety for pedestrians. You can just tell the way people move down in those sections has just changed. So that kind of stuff is important, and I see in the list of action items that you're looking at expanding this, you're looking at this kind of more broadly. But in the action items, there aren't lists of specific places where you're intervening. Those are broad, they seem to be broader points, though the rest of the report talks about specific locations and intersections, and I'm sure you know this, but Ward 2 features very heavily in all the most dangerous places. Some places not as heavily, but in some, like in one place, 7 out of the 10 intersections or 7 out of the 10 areas are in Ward 2. And so I'm just trying to understand what analysis you're using to determine where this work will start, because it's the number one thing I hear from everybody downtown is that pedestrian safety is the thing that people are most concerned about first, before everything else, in terms of their ability just to walk around and get around and get from place to place. And so that's my first question. Then I have a question more about the proactive way in which this work is done. So how are you applying this list of actions to the city itself?
Sorry, through the chair. So vulnerable road users was identified as one of the key emphasis areas, and that would include definitely pedestrians. And of course, you always, not always, but you will see some overlap in the 4 emphasis areas. So for instance, there could be a pedestrian that may be involved in an accident, in a collision, in an intersection as a result of an aggressive driver. But the safety of pedestrians has been identified as a key emphasis area. And within those, there are multiple countermeasures to deal specifically, and you mentioned a few, that would address safety for pedestrians. Staff will, on an annual basis, be reviewing data, including collision, including best practices, including a whole network system that will help prioritize exactly which countermeasures can be applied throughout the city to deal specifically with vulnerable road users. So it'll be a dynamic, organic process that will happen every year, and that will be presented as part of our annual report.
Thank you. So one tension that exists in that system, though, that this report is suggesting it might overcome at some point, which would be a thrill to me and everybody downtown, is corridor management. Those words bother me a lot. I understand it's a department and division here at the city, so I'm not bothered by the department and division at the city itself, but I'm just bothered by the concept, meaning that one of the issues we have is where there is a tension between pedestrians and the movement of vehicles. There's not necessarily always the prioritization of pedestrians in those situations. I can think of some examples, I won't bother with them now, but how are we going to deal with that competition when we're trying to get to zero? And the part of the question I have about that, this is a bit of a layered question and I get that, is we're relying heavily on reported statistics here. Reported fatal collisions, we're looking at fatalities, reported injuries, but I know anecdotally, just from being downtown, that that's just not how intersections actually function day to day, is that the reports are a piece of the puzzle, but certainly a huge piece of the puzzle is missing. So how do we deal with that issue? Because pedestrians are having one experience, but then we're worrying about corridor management, and that seems to be a preoccupation at times, which is frustrating for residents. I'm trying to understand how to square that.
Certainly. So I'll try to take the second part of your question first, and that's with respect to what other sources of data other than reported information that could be used. A key component of the implementation of Vision Zero is community engagement. It's a integral part of not only relying on statistics, but relying on engagement within the community to help prioritize exactly where there still may be conflicts, there still may be issues and tensions that require some form of countermeasure. So there will be a requirement from staff to be engaged with the community so that that is a key source of information. With respect to corridor management, I'll turn it over to Mike Field to help answer that question. But it's with respect to building a culture within the city at every aspect in terms of roadway safety. Go ahead.
Through the chair to the councillor, it's a good question. often we will talk about the location-specific issues and the reasons why we're talking about that specific location may be from a number of different things. We may have found that through the collision data itself that it's being flagged as an area of concern, or there may be some community concern or council concern about that location. One thing as far as how we extend that kind of thinking, like what do we do more broadly across the city, a good example would be, it actually shows up in the report as far as identifying that intersections themselves are an emphasis area. That's where most of the city's injury and fatalities occur within the road network. So it's important to focus on intersections. I'll use an example of last year we brought forward guidelines for the implementation of no right turn on red and leading pedestrian intervals, where it set out a framework for us to use that we don't necessarily need to look at collision data, or we don't need for something to happen to understand that that measure would be beneficial at one of those locations. So it had some default categories within there. So for example, if it's a downtown, we should use LPI within a downtown. We don't need to wait for collisions to occur. We know that there's a benefit to it because there are pedestrians present and they have a benefit from a safety benefit from having LPIs. So we do have measures within the action plan that look more broadly, more holistically, saying these are the types of things we should do across the entire city, regardless of what the collision data is telling us or not telling us, to help guide those things. So in other words, not waiting for a collision to happen or not waiting for a fatality or an injury to happen, but do things proactively. So there's components within the action plan, within those 91 actions that have a very specific action that requires very specific data, and then there's ones that are more holistic about implementing no turn on red and LPI more broadly across the city.
Thanks very much. My last question is about something you hinted at, which is about proactivity. So oftentimes what we're doing, from my perspective anyways, and I think somewhat from your perspective, is we're reacting to a lot of what's happening. So we're seeing statistics that point us in a direction. We're hearing from a councillor, from residents about something, and that will happen through processes that are dynamic, I suppose, active, not necessarily passive or experiential. Are we doing something to move toward more of a sort of almost like spot check, QA, audit, analysis model at some point that would say, we're just gonna go look here. We're gonna go here and have a look at this intersection, and we're gonna see if that's going to have an impact based on other things that maybe we're not looking at right now. But I guess what I could say to you is that in a certain block radius, I could pick 8 blocks downtown, I could tell you every intersection there needs to be improved. But I know that because of the nature of the way the people who live around those intersections may be, or the way advocacy happens across neighborhoods, right? That's not necessarily gonna make it to a motion or make it to a staff work plan. There are a lot of gaps, I guess I would say. And so those are because we maybe don't have as much of a proactive approach. Some of the things you're talking about, like LPIs, other things are obviously gonna help to deal with that. But how do we audit or assess, frankly, all the city's intersections and in that way that is more proactive? You're already doing some of that work, I understand, but I would like to understand it better.
I like the question in the sense that those reactive scenarios are most visible to all of us because we're reacting to something. Something's occurred and we're doing something. The roadway safety team does work on a lot of things behind the scenes that are more proactive, so they're not as visible. And because there's maybe not an incident or something occurred, they're not as visible to council or to the public. And I think that's part of the components of the Vision Zero Action Plan, making sure we're doing the engagement education thing to really telling the story of what we are out there doing and what may not be visible to people. I'll give an example that we have concentrated within the city of replacing the city's traffic cabinets and controllers, which may seem a boring, geeky kind of thing, but they are a critical component to the function of the city's traffic signals. For example, an older traffic signal controller can't implement leading pedestrian interval because it's technologically not able to. So over the past year, we have around 650 traffic signals in the city. In 2 years, we replaced 200 of those traffic controllers with modern ones so that we can implement those measures where we want to have them. So that's an invisible thing where the public may see someone kind of digging around in a cabinet, but in actual fact, there's a proactive roadway safety-based test that's occurring at that location. And because there's no incident or anything like that happening, it's hard to equate kind of that work from a roadway safety measure. But I just want to return to the one point of we need to do a better job in telling the community what we are doing for roadway safety to make it safer and not relying on those post horrific collisions and fatalities to speak about roadway safety and say what we're doing. So I appreciate your point in that in itself, that we need to do more about highlighting the proactive work that we do across the city, which is embedded within the plan itself.
Thank you, and thanks for your report.
Thank you. Next up, we have Councillor Huang.
Thank you. Picking up off of where Councillor Crutch left off, I also want to talk about that proactiveness, and especially when it comes to intersections. In Ward 4, and Mike, you know all about this, is that we have several very problematic intersections, Ottawa and Cannon, for example, where we've had cars plow into buildings. King Street at Graham is a weird jog where we've also had cars plow into residential buildings. So how do we talk about that in the context of this report? Because I find that it's hard for me to explain to a resident because it sounds like it's just a lot of everything. So how can you talk about how we would go about that proactive nature? What is the rationale? How do we look at it from almost like a ranking perspective? Because you only have one roads team, one roads traffic team. So how do you prioritize what goes where and where goes what?
Through the chair to the councillor, we use a lot of information to help make those decisions. There's some content within the report that kind of speaks to that, but we've also talked about it during annual collision reports and that sort of thing, about the collection of data through, say, collision data and a ranking methodology that we use to rank locations across the city, both for intersections but road segments as well, in an order that is the highest opportunity for enhancements to the lowest opportunity for enhancements. And obviously we want to work on the locations that are right at the top that have the most needs or the most highest opportunity to make them safer. We have had some success in doing that, in that we report back annually about the top 10 locations, and we've seen some changeover where, you know, there's a location, Dundurn and King, historically has been one of the #1 locations. It's not on the top 10 list anymore. So we do use data and performance data to help decide where we're going to apply our resources, because they're not infinite, as to your point. They're finite. As much as we would like to have infinite resources, if council would be so kind as to provide that, we could do that. But we really direct our resources. I think that's where the emphasis areas within the report is really critical. These are areas in the city that or areas in which we understand them to have the greatest benefit if we're to focus our attention on to help lower the number of injuries and collisions and fatalities in the city. Sometimes that's frustrating for councillors and for residents to hear from us when they have a location that's very important to them. They view it as very unsafe. However, we have 50 other locations in the city historically, or from a statistical perspective, are far less safe than those locations. That means that location may wait for a while, or you may get an answer back saying, no, we're not going to advance anything in the near term, because that's really, we're working on all of those other locations. But we use a bunch of different data to determine that. The latest data, which is, I think, makes an appearance on both reports, is leveraging some data from public health about information that they have related to the hospital network and how people are coming into the hospital and reporting those types of things, and gives us a deeper insight beyond traditional collision data, but also what happens after someone's involved in a collision. But also it opens up opportunities to see people who don't report collisions to police, but show up at the hospital because they're injured, which are typically vulnerable road users are more regularly not reporting to police, but they come into the hospital. So we're getting that data to also help inform those decisions.
Thank you.
Sorry, if I may as well, just very quickly, I know you have some more questions. I think what also we have now in this report or in this new plan is actually a methodology or a scientific-based approach to what works best in specific locations. And those locations could exist in many areas of your ward, but we now have, through this new plan, actual evidence scientific-based benefits results that will tell you if a specific measure works better in this particular type of location, this particular type of emphasis area. And by having that information, by having that knowledge, it helps our staff in terms of being more proactive. It now can come to say, based on the evidence base, based on this methodology and history, we know this type of measure can work better and yield better results in this particular location.
I appreciate that. I think my second question through you, Chair, is a question around coordination of all of the project partners that were listed in this plan. Because I do see Deputy Chief is here, Hennick, because there are going to be times where an engineering solution at an intersection is not enough, but this is where we might need to have more opportunities with, say, daily school route or with the police to help with coordinate. So how are we doing that coordination aspect of this? Because this isn't all a City of Hamilton exercise. This is a all of community kind of exercise. So who takes the lead on that, and how do we prioritize specific intersections when perhaps an engineering solution is not there or will not be there for a while?
Certainly. So I'll begin and I'll ask Mike to also elaborate. So you're correct. There are many different partners, and Mike made that point that we are partners in all this. We'll be having a role to play. So the police will have a role to play specifically on enforcement. Absolutely. Our colleagues in transportation planning will have a role to play with respect to including roadway safety principles at the beginning. As plans or designs are being created. And also working with the school boards. We appreciate that education is a key role in ensuring that everybody understands their role when it comes to roadway safety. And education is very critical. So we will continue our partnership with the school boards as part of this. But yes, the plan does describe a coming together as a group and how we will be assigning responsibilities accordingly based on the type of countermeasure. And I'll just let Mike just continue on that.
Thank you. Maybe to elaborate on that piece, currently we have the Hamilton Strategic Road Safety Committee, which is comprised of a number of internal, external stakeholders, and we meet quarterly and talk about those matters to, in essence, to coordinate. We meet with Hamilton Police Services quarterly with the Traffic Services Unit, and we exchange information. The report brings the Strategic Road Safety Committee to the next level. It recommends or makes a suggestion that we should have a subcommittee for Vision Zero, which I believe, and which the consultant report talks about, is bringing more governance, more transparency to what we do, but also have a bit more, a higher ability to have coordination with internal, external agencies through a committee such as that. So it's recognizing that while we have the Hamilton Strategic Road Safety Committee, it's something that's just managed by the Transportation Division on its own, but bringing that to a higher level, because it does take everyone's efforts, not just the Transportation Divisions, to fill in that safety equation. And many groups are doing awesome work on that front. And there's endless opportunities to further enhance that collaboration to make things even advanced safety even better than what we have. So I would say that that's the two parts: the existing committee and then the recommendation report to have a formal subcommittee to help out with that.
Okay. I'll take this offline. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor. Next up, we have Councillor Craig Kazar.
Thank you, Chair Nan, and thank you, everybody, for this report, and everyone in the back row there, and for the work that you're doing. It's so very important. It's the #1 topic that my office hears about, and that's probably pretty consistent around the Horseshoe, I'd imagine. People are concerned about safety in their neighborhood for them and for their children, for their aging parents. And just in Ward 12, this term, there have been 6 road fatalities. Just going to pause there. That's just in one ward, 6 over the last few years, which is horrible. And I know the stats show we're getting better, and there's so much effort being put towards improving. It's painfully slow, and that's not a dig against anyone here. It's just the fact of where we're at right now. So I think it's in my role to challenge this, and are we pushing hard enough? Because I'm very supportive of all this work. Just to kind of frame things up, in the report it talks about 73,000 reported injury collisions nationally, 1,600 reported fatal collisions in 2020, and almost $43 billion in social impact, social costs. Really doing really rough numbers. For Hamilton, 1.5% of Canada's population, that's about $640 million annually of social impact, and that's not even talking about all the emotional distress and everything else. So this is a rhetorical question, but to the point about resources, so how much should we be investing in safety when there's roughly $640 million of cost in Hamilton annually? Clearly, taxpayers, property taxpayers cannot afford that. This is a bigger question to multiple levels of government. But that aside, just you identified intersections as the #1 priority, and we've talked about that before. That's not news to anyone that's been paying attention. And the report has a lot of action, number 91 actions, different term you use, but they all seem very incremental. So if we're thinking about intersections, and I'm thinking of a very typical suburban intersection, you have 2 lanes each way, then a left turn lane, so 6 lanes. It's wide open, encourages speed, it's hard for pedestrians. And engineering is also highlighted here as the most immediate and positive impact. And across the industry, that would be the case. I spent a lot of time learning here the best practices. The question is, why don't we be more direct about making intersections safer? For example, Winnipeg right now is doing something. They're narrowing a particular intersection for a period of a few weeks and getting data, because it even touches on that in the report, that those intersections and speed are what cause the most damage to vehicles, to people, and to lives. So I get the LPIs we're talking about before, leading pedestrian intervals, and all those kind of things. But it would seem to me, if that's the biggest problem, we should just tackle that head on and deal with it all at once and find out what really works, because incremental change over years gets better, but through you, Chair, it doesn't, it's very slow. And why wouldn't we take a more direct approach?
Through the chair, I'll begin to answer the question, and I'll certainly turn it over to Mike. Part of that does require us having a commitment to resource allocation. As you indicated, intersections are the #1 emphasis area when it comes to the amount of collisions and fatal accidents as well. So there would require absolutely a commitment that we dedicate the necessary resources looking at intersections, recognizing, as well as I mentioned before, there's an overlap where there could be an accident, a serious or fatal, in an intersection, but could also have been as a result of an aggressive driver or a distracted driver, or the road user was not protected accordingly. But nevertheless, it does require us to come to a commitment of putting staff and money resources towards intersections. As you mentioned, later this year, we will be coming forward with a report about traffic calming and an intake process and how we should be allocating and prioritizing traffic calming initiatives for specific transportation locations. So there would be a need and a commitment from staff and the council that that's where the resources be required. I think Mike also mentioned before that it doesn't just happen at the engineering level, it has to happen as the intersection is being designed at the planning stage. That culture of roadway safety has to begin from the outset, from the conceptual point, so that it introduces and implements the engineering countermeasures at that point. But I'll just turn it over also to Mike if he has any questions, or sorry, comments.
Building on what Vince mentioned, a lot of one of my colleagues presents a good question. She says, if you had an infinite amount of money, what would be the first thing that you would do, or what would you do with that money? And I think for us in the city, that's reconstruction. A lot of the intersections that we have in the city are designed or built in the day when vehicles were the number one. They're built around moving vehicles as opposed to moving pedestrians or keeping pedestrians safe. So that's where partnerships such as within engineering services or planning, that sort of thing, whenever we're going to rebuild the right-of-way, that we take the opportunity to also consider what does roadway safety mean in that equation, and then rebuild the infrastructure to something that we believe as being safe and modern. That's obviously a gigantic task to try to rebuild the city under complete streets kind of principles. So it has to happen incrementally as we work through our budget cycles and all that sort of thing. In the meantime, we always look for easy and early interventions that we can make to an intersection or to a roadway that can be done inexpensively and quickly, that doesn't require reconstruction. We look for those opportunities as we can, but sometimes there's only so much we can fit in with an intersection under that kind of approach, where ultimately it has to be reconstructed. And that's where we get into programming and building those kinds of things within scoping, and then but also identifying when we're building the public works capital budget process, what are the projects that we need to do from a safety lens, as opposed to like we decide we need to do a project because there's pavement related conditions, or we need to do a project because there's water related conditions. We're also identifying when do we need to do something due to safety, which we have elements of that in the capital budget now. We started doing that a few years ago. It does happen incrementally. Has to happen that way based on resourcing and also how we're investing all of the different projects that we're building on the city. But I just want to land back on that one thing. Anytime we're rebuilding, we're touching the corridor, that's an opportunity to make it safer as well. So the roadway safety team behind me, we contribute to those scope things to say, hey, when we're doing this, let's also do this because there's a roadway safety opportunity here, and not bypass those and lose those opportunities.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I know I'm over time. Just to wrap up on that, I'll go on a second time. Appreciate that. I understand the magnitude of it. I just feel it's my responsibility to push a little bit. And I get and it mentions in the report, we do this at reconstruction time. So I've engaged with engineering services staff about the environmental assessment on McNiven Road in Ward 12, and appreciate that opportunity to get that right. More immediately is Golf Links Road reconstruction, which is in the budget in the next couple of years. 2 of the fatalities in this term have been on Golf Links Road, 1 at an intersection. So I look forward to seeing those words come to life here to build something that's going to be a lot safer than it is today. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Councillor Maureen Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Really on such an important topic when we're discussing deaths and injuries that could be avoidable, it's a pity that not all members of committee and council are available for this discussion. 5 lives are lost every year due to gun violence in the city, and 13 are lost due to road violence. And yet when we talk about road violence, somehow there's a war on cars, or we're trying to impede something. And all we're trying to do is to say everybody's life has value, and we should do everything we can in order to uphold that life and save that person from chronic injury and pain, and or their ability to get home to their family at the end of the day. Thank you for this report. On the issue, it's still unclear to me, and I know we've had this discussion before. I think the report is saying there's no budget impact, but in future budgets, in order to enact the new identified activities, we'd need maybe another $2 million on top of the base. And when we've had this discussion before about how much are we spending to uphold, which should be our first commitment, to save lives, it's hard to discern that because we embed some of the cost in a reconstruction and then we embed some of the cost on standalone Vision Zero. So are we any closer on being able to identify how much we're spending on trying to honor what should be our first duty, is to uphold the health and safety of residents, whether they're walking or whether they're in a vehicle?
Through the chair, and thank you for that question. So the report does say that in order to implement the expanded initiatives that we're currently doing and new initiatives, to be specific, a $2.3 million investment would be used to fund those particular measures. We do have the opportunity to pursue sources of revenue to help fund that $2.3 million, other than just the levy. So for instance, there is the Provincial Road Safety Initiative Fund that was introduced last year, which the City of Hamilton will be accessing and will be used towards the implementation of some of these measures for locations where there used to be an AAC camera. We still have available to us funds from the red light reserve, so the revenues that we receive through that particular initiative. But also we also offer opportunities, and we will present during the budget process, whether it be a capital operating budget request. So there is a need, as you mentioned, for an investment. We do have some opportunities in terms of funding to make that investment happen, and we will be pursuing that and accordingly presenting those to this committee and to council at budget time. We currently do have staff and Vision Zero initiatives funded through the reserve and through the levy. It's approximately $4 million just for Vision Zero. But as you said, that doesn't account for all the other funds that are used for road reconstruction that incorporate roadway safety or other initiatives that are happening. But specifically, yes, we spend approximately about $4 million as pertains to Vision Zero for staffing and for initiatives. But we will be pursuing multiple sources in order to make that $2.3 million investment a reality.
I appreciate that we had a change in the agenda, and I didn't object to it, nor do I do now. But there is a complementary report early in the agenda which does identify that roadway safety is informed by the principle and the practice and the outcome of equity. And what I'm not clear on in reference, I think there's been a few questions about what's informing how we prioritize our action. So if one was to read an earlier report, which is on the public record, that there is a socioeconomic element to death and injury for Hamiltonians. How is that informing our priority list? Because it's still, with apologies, I'm still not clear on, to boil it down to its simplest phrase or simplest scenario, if there was one child, for example, who was killed at an intersection versus 5 vehicular drivers who were injured, and we're seeing a pattern of something there. Like, what is prioritizing our triaging of action through the chair?
Through the chair to the councillor, I'll maybe let others respond to equity from the corporation and how things are prioritized through that perspective. There is within one of the actions about further embedding equity within the decision trees that we have for roadway safety. So that's one of the, I was just trying to find it quickly, but it's one of the line items within the chart within there. It is something that we've been progressing on in the roadway safety world. And we have elements of it that we historically have done by maybe not naming it as equity. So if we're doing something like we're doing a review of an intersection to determine if it requires or should have a traffic signal, implicit to that is collision data review, but also pedestrian counts. How many pedestrians are here at this location? Other base decision factors that we have are, what's around this location? Is there a park? Is there a school? That sort of thing. So there's embedded elements of equity already. It's just we haven't called them out as directly as being equity considerations. We do have within the first place you would have seen equity directly embedded within decision trees are within that, I seem to be coming back to it, but the leading pedestrian interval, the no right turn on red interval, and the use of leading bicycles intervals has a section in it where we're assessing equity. And we're using some tools to look at the city, to look at where there's marginalized communities, where there's people who are more impacted by collisions. We understand that people who are in marginalized communities have to rely on walking and biking more often, and they are more impacted by the violence of a traffic collision than anyone else. So in that model, if we have, I'll just pick on, a suburban area versus a downtown area, if we have 2 identical locations, but one's within the downtown area, it's going to trigger the equity score saying, we should do that location first before we do the other location. So we're embedding those things, and that's why there's a direct line item within the report or within the action item under the new plan to say we need to do that more and we need to get better at that to make sure that those decisions are grounded with an equity lens to make sure we're protecting those who are most susceptible to being injured within the city's right of way, that we're protecting the interests of those people and considering their increased exposure to when we're making decisions on investing, whether it's a small thing, a sign, or something as big as reconstructing the entire right of way.
I'm at time. Thank you very much for your responses.
Next first-time speaker is Councillor Taddison, then it'll be myself, then second-time Councillor Kazar.
So I'm really pleased to see the full adoption of a concept that I brought forward 4 years ago to Mike about rural safety community zones in Hamilton's Vision Zero action plan. So with these, I guess, rural community safety zones, we actually have a few in place now. With this new Vision Zero program, what is the process to begin identifying areas of concern? Is that something we can start immediately, or is that a future date down the road when we bring these forward?
So through the chair, the action plan doesn't preclude any councillor wanting to submit to our attention a particular location or area where they believe it would benefit from some form of evaluation or study. So if the councillor had a particular rural area in the ward that has been brought to his attention and he would like to bring it to ours, that process will not be in any way changed. And we now also have the Rural Road Safety Toolbox, which this committee and council also received the report and approved a few months ago, which provides us with a whole new set of tools and countermeasures to deal specifically within rural areas. But yes, councillors that would like to bring to our attention any particular area that would warrant an investigation or analysis, we would certainly continue to do that practice.
Can I ask you another question then? With the adoption of the new Vision Zero program, will there be a different set of criteria that enables things that weren't passed beforehand to possibly be passed now?
So I'll begin and then I'll turn it over to Mike. So the Vision Zero Action Plan has many new but also existing measures which have now been applied a score which helps our staff in terms of identifying what particular measure may have a greater level of success or benefit for that particular area or for that particular situation. So with that new information, with that knowledge, certainly staff have more reinforcement of their current practices, essentially. So it's in no way to dismiss or discount what they'd be currently doing, but in essence, really reinforcing that certain countermeasures are more likely to achieve a greater result. And as a result, those ones should be considered or warrant an implementation. There still will be a warrant analysis. There still will be a review, a test, so to speak, that will be used to determine if, in fact, a particular area would warrant a particular countermeasure being applied. But now with this information, this coefficient result benefit data we have, it will certainly just be much more efficient and effective for our staff.
Okay, thanks. I just bring that up because I just went through a situation with a rural bus stop safety issue, and a parent brought forward an issue where on a rural road, not continuous, but like 3 times in the past 5 months, people are just passing the bus even though it's stopped and the bus lights are flashing. We went through, asked for a stop sign or a bus warning stop ahead, and that was denied. Is that something that would be re-reviewed right now with this new Vision Zero program?
Through the chair, and we can certainly take this offline with the councillor in terms of determining if, in fact, the result would be any different. I'm not going to, at this juncture, tell you exactly yes or no, but we can certainly do that review.
Okay, thank you. No more questions.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll pass the chair to Councillor Kassar, and through you, most of my questions have been asked and answered. I just want to start off by saying thank you for all the work that has been done on behalf of Ward 3 residents. I know we've been a pretty active office working in conjunction with transportation and the entire team, not only in terms of implementation over the last 6 years, but also specifically all of the studies being conducted in flagged areas, to your point, Director, as issues arise, and we report them as councillors to your team, the team back there, and the work that they do to do that technical assessment for safety reviews and bringing forward recommendations and figuring out how we're going to fund them is much appreciated, because it is a very active and ongoing piece of work for this ward, but also citywide. My question, only remaining through you, Vice Chair, relates to the governance component of the recommendation for subcommittee. There's reference there that the existing group includes public health agencies, but then the paragraph that describes the recommendation speaks specifically about working with Hamilton Public Health. Could you just unpack that a little bit in terms of the partnership, and then also define, if the plan is to go towards a subcommittee structure, would you also be looking for council representatives on that in the next term of council?
Through the chair, I'll take the second part of your question. So we're going to be looking at the various options with our colleagues in the Clerk's Division, but our preference would be to have a counselor representation on the subcommittee. Not unlike how some of the existing subcommittees are organized, whether it be exclusively counselors or be a combination of external agencies and representatives and counselors. But the intent is to have a counselor representation, yes.
Okay, so a subcommittee of council, and then recommendations to be clarified through the clerk's office, and then a terms of reference, et cetera, would all come forward to the next term of council?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, thank you. No further questions. I'll take the chair back. Your turn for a second time.
Thank you very much, Chair. And that's a great segue to the next question I had, which was about the Vision Zero subcommittee and the composition of it, not so much councillors, but community organizations. I've worked, and others have, with Daily School Route, and I think an organization like them that looks through the eyes of a child and how a child experiences the city is vitally important. Just a side note, I noticed the young demographic that's defined in the report says 15 to 24, something like that. So I know it's not a direct slight, but just even in the way the reports are written, it doesn't even necessarily consider children, school-age children. But I think it's really important that someone like organizations like the Daily School Route would be part of that committee. So I don't know if there's any other comments on how that process will play out, and is something like that a possibility to have a group like them part of it?
Through the chair, yes, we'll be looking at all options. I happen to be staff representative on the downtown subcommittee, and the downtown subcommittee is made up of downtown agencies such as the BIA and councillors. So it's been beneficial to hear the input from stakeholders such as those like you mentioned. So it's certainly an option that we will definitely consider.
Okay, good to know. Two other questions. One, in the report, it talks about, of course, engineering, which we covered, and as well education. And on page 33 of the report, it says, engineering can have direct implication or direct impact, positive impact, but education and engagement countermeasures may take a significant amount of time to influence road user behavior and result in permanent behavior change. However, they may be much greater than individual engineering countermeasures. So I struggled actually with that, because from all the best practices that I read, engineering is king, and I'm trying to understand what we know empirically about how education, and maybe there's different definitions of education, how education improves road safety better than engineering. So a big question, maybe need to take it offline, but if there's any comments.
Through the chair, so I'll be happy to take that conversation offline. Admittedly, I'm not a specialist in education communications. Having said that, I have been engaged in many communication campaigns, education campaigns, advertising campaigns, and at some time it makes it difficult to truly see if the change of behavior is a result of a person reading or viewing a specific campaign, whether it be a poster or hearing something on the radio or receiving something over Instagram. We would certainly, as part of the monitoring responsibility, we will be looking at that. We will try to undertake what type of relationship exists between communication, education, and behavior modification. And with that information, we can certainly then consider either focusing a campaign, change the resource allocation accordingly. But that type of information, I think, would be very helpful in focusing exactly perhaps particular targeted areas we may want to focus on, like you mentioned, young children, aggressive drivers, distracted drivers. So it would be useful in helping us actually frame our communication campaign so it would have its most effective results.
Right. And thank you for that. And I think with very limited resources, this very small team here and limited dollars, it's really important that we focus on what's actually going to have an impact. And similar theme, and I know I'm getting a little nitpicky now, but want to put it out there if there's any comments. Another one of the action items was about lawn signs. And we have those today, and they say slow down, drive carefully, children at play, whatever. And just for kicks, I went to look at the CMF clearinghouse, which I think is where these come from, and yeah, it's a little nerdy. Couldn't even find that it's registered. In fact, I got the response back saying actually doesn't actually have a direct impact. So again, when it's coming down to resources and giving potentially a false sense of security, my personal experience is signs actually don't make a difference. So if there's any comments about that, but would also welcome an offline conversation to make sure we're maximizing our resource expenditures.
Yep, through the chair, I would agree that signs in of themselves and exclusivity may not make a difference, but I think it's signage in conjunction with other initiatives, other efforts, whether it be engineering, whether it be enforcement, could have a role to play and could have a significant role. So we would have to look at each specific application and determine exactly if in fact signage as part of an education campaign, not in and of itself, but part of a comprehensive education campaign, would actually have an impact.
Okay, and just a closing comment. Thank you very much again to you and to everyone in the back row and anyone else who touches this, because road safety is so important, and I appreciate the work despite the fact that I'm challenging some of it. So appreciate it. Thank you.
No, it's healthy, healthy dialogue. Next up is Councillor Maureen Wilson.
Thank you. Just briefly on the point about who may be sitting at the table at a future Vision Zero subcommittee, there's over 80,000 students in this city who regrettably don't get to vote, but they have to navigate our streets every day. And I think the older that we get, we sometimes forget looking through the city through the eyes of a child and how they get about and how they think and how they negotiate space. So if there was an opportunity to try and bring that practice, or people who work with them or advocate on behalf of them, I think that would be a good news story. I am interested in the Appendix A, where there was reference to the age and gender, how age and gender inform the statistics. More than, I think it said 33% of all at-fault drivers between the ages of 20 and 35 are, 33% of all at-fault drivers are between the ages of 20 and 35. And the majority of those are male drivers. Did I get that right through the chair?
Through the chair, correct.
Okay. And I see that changes slightly as people age. It tends to even out a bit. I'm wondering how or if that statistic informs both perhaps how we do our engagement, so that we can consider that in our feedback. If not, through the chair.
Through the chair, Chris Day, Superintendent of Roadway Safety. We are looking at how we do education and outreach within roadway safety, and as part of that exercise, we will be considering the demographics of those that we're looking to reach as part of that. So.
Thank you for that. I think those are all my questions. Like my colleagues, I'm very appreciative of this work. I know when this council first came together in 2022, everybody was asked what was the issue that you heard most of at the door. And there was unanimous. People said traffic safety and pedestrian safety. So I'm hearing that also from my colleagues still. So this report is welcome to receive it, and whomever sits around this table in the future, I'm sure they will put their shoulder to the wheel and lean into it in earnest. Thank you very much for your work.
Thank you, Councillor. Shoulder to the wheel and drive really slowly, but do the work with due diligence. Thank you for the dialogue and the discussion and the questions and the answers. Thank you for your patience to the public. Really important piece of work for the municipality. recognizing the time. We did get a mover and seconder. No, we did not. I need a mover and seconder. Councillor Kassar and Councillor Kretsch, thank you both. And that is to receive the presentation and approve the recommendations in the report. So we'll couple it both together, and that's an electronic vote, please. And that carries, thank you. And on to items for information. First up is 7.1 PW 26033, referenced strengthening pedestrian and roadway safety following recent fatalities. Could I get a mover and seconder to put the report on the floor? Thank you, Councillor Huang, Councillor Kassar. Any discussion on this information report? First up is Councillor Huang.
So obviously the segues very well after our Vision Zero report. I'm thankful for this data. I'm also thankful that we had so many partners that came in to speak about this. I think this comes back to my question around, I had alluded to it, but really Councillor Maureen Wilson had definitively said it was about equity, and it was about how we are trying to make those decisions. How do we prioritize, rationalize, that sort of thing. So I wonder if you could speak a little bit about that as it relates to this particular item on our agenda, please.
Sure. Through the chair to the councillor, this is information report related to motion and a number of actions. And kind of the punchline of the entire thing is the Vision Zero action plan, of course, is the framework and the answer. So it's a very similar answer that I gave previously, is that we directly embed those types of decision-making factors in what we do. And then we inadvertently do it as well. Traditionally, there's some factors that we don't name them as equity factors, but they are equity factors. So we use those things to help decide what we're going to invest in and where we're doing our work. An emphasis which is worth mentioning, whether it's the Vision Zero action plan or this discussion, is an emphasis on protecting the safety of vulnerable road users, which is comprised of pedestrians and cyclists and young and elderly, to make sure that the infrastructure suits them and protects their safety interests as well. So those are considerations that we make when we're reviewing a project or whatever it is. I'll use an example of a traffic signal and how much time we afford people to cross the road. The walking speed of a pedestrian is calculated around an elderly person because they walk slower, so they need more time to cross the road. We don't want them rushed. So that's an equity-based decision that we've made for a long period of time. We are becoming more comfortable about talking and using the terminology equity because that's been a practice for a long time that we've been using. Another consideration is when we're, I think I've talked about it before, all of the city's traffic signals, we want to have the accessible pedestrian signal. So if you have limited visibility, the signal itself makes some noise so you can figure out when you need to cross the street. In that instance, we have been reaching out to the Canadian Institute of the Blind to say, where are the parts of the city where you understand people with visual impairments live? And when we're going to install that infrastructure, we're going to install it where they say these people are, as opposed to us making that decision and saying, we think we're going to put it here. So it's leveraging those kinds of things that we have today, those traditional practices that we've had in place, but also building on that and making sure that we're the roadway safety team, us all here understand how important equity is and how to embed those models in what we're doing. So it's being considered.
And if I may as well, the report does mention that we are building partnerships now with public health, who are providing us with very useful information with respect to injuries, information we see from hospitals that tells us exactly who are the ones getting injured. So the data that we are collecting and using through public health will be something that will be embedded and part of our established process moving forward.
Okay, thank you for that. Along the same lines as my initial question on the Vision Zero report, I want to talk about it from a proactive stance. So how do we speak about enforcement, traffic enforcement, from a proactive stance? Because that's also what we hear from residents as well, that there is a perceived lack of enforcement on our existing traffic rules today. So what is the opportunity here as we relate back to this potential report?
Through the chair, thank you. We work with Hamilton Police Services. We do meet on a regular basis where we exchange information that could be used towards targeted enforcement programs. I have with me today Hamilton Police Services. I'll let him introduce himself and then see if he can also elaborate. Answer.
Good afternoon. My name is David Hennick. I'm a superintendent with the Hamilton Police Service, and I oversee our traffic safety division as part of my responsibilities. So thank you for the question, Councillor, and hopefully I can answer it. I looked this morning, just for quick reference and to give you some stats. So this morning, as of today, our enforcement efforts are up 42% year over year from January. Our MVCs are down 7%.
MVCs, motor vehicle collisions? MVCs?
Sorry?
MVCs, you said?
Motor vehicle collisions,
Right,
yes.
okay.
And our ability, our success rate at catching impaired drivers is up 3%. So the good thing is all of the indicators that are important are heading in the right direction. Our performance as far as service around traffic enforcement is not where we would like it to be and hasn't been for a couple of years. I spoke to that recently at our police service board meeting. I gave an update there. I talked about the impact of staffing, wellness, our organization coming at WSIB impacts, all of that. We turned a corner late in 2025, and our performance is back on track to where we want it to be, and we continue to improve in each of those identified areas. I want to be careful not to take full credit for the reduction in motor vehicle collisions. In January 1st of 2025, there was a legislative change. So reporting of motor vehicle collisions, there was a dollar amount that changed. So there used to be $2,000 for an accident, mandatory reporting. Now it's $5,000. So some of those reduction in MVCs could not be attributed to some of our efforts. Maybe it could be a legislative change. So we will know more, next year and the following years. Was it legislative change? Was it as a result of some of our proactive efforts? You had asked earlier actually about how do we work together? I can tell you, Mike Field and I and our teams are connected on a weekly basis, if not daily. I, for example, used to be Councillor Jackson's crime manager. So that process and the processes that we have in place still exist today. So the complaints that you make through the crime manager's office make it through to the divisions. The divisions then give out direction to our patrol officers who will go out to those locations. They'll have the opportunity to provide feedback back to the crime manager, and then eventually, if the location is of substantive enough, it'll make its way to the traffic safety office, where we have traffic safety specialists that can go out and really increase their enforcement efforts to address any violations that are there. So our communication between our offices is fantastic. It couldn't be better. We share data on a very regular basis. Recently, our chief approved the Crime Prevention and Evidence-Based Policing Unit. Really exciting, because I've heard lots of questions about return on investment. Public is making significant investment in policing and infrastructure costs to make road safety improvements there. And so we're looking, or we will be able to report in more depth on the efficacy of our traffic enforcement efforts as we move forward, hopefully within the next 6 months to a year or so.
Thank you. Those are all my questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Frying. Next up is Councillor Crutch, and then after him is me.
Thank you. My question is specifically about former and planned ASE locations. And so There were some automated speed enforcement locations that didn't go through because of whatever. And as a result of them not going through, there was one proposed to be, I think we were trying to get one to happen at Glenfern and Queen, which for the residents there was really important because it's a difficult area in which to solve this problem. But when I look at the list, I see that you're doing dynamic speed signage, and that's helpful to the extent that there isn't already dynamic speed signage. But what other kinds of measures are you trying to employ here? The reason I ask is because these intersections were in areas were identified because there's a road safety issue. In this specific spot is extremely constrained, but we could do something like put parking along the road during non-peak hours, as I've suggested and other residents have suggested doing. But then the tension gets to, from my perspective, again, right? Tension gets to then a conversation that is hard to coordinate. So I'm just wanting to talk about this a bit publicly because I think some of the things you're trying to do here are good, but we're getting caught in I don't have the right words for it, but cars need to come down the roadway, but children need to cross the road to get to school, but people need to be able to actually hear one another on the sidewalk. And we need to think about how to get parking there. Like, how can we actually, like, as a city, coordinate these kinds of things? Because what happens is the conversation goes from your group to parking. Maybe the word's not corridor management in this case, but like transportation stuff. And so then there's this activity. Meanwhile, this is something that I think you're seized with caring about. So how do you make it happen? How do we get a solution here? Because there are a number of places like this. This is one example. It's a very unique example, but there are all these rules we have that constrain us from making it safe. But people live there. Help me out.
Certainly. So through the chair, as a result of the cancellation of the automated speed enforcement program, the province has now introduced the Road Safety Initiative Fund. And that is the program that the City of Hamilton partners will be able to work together to consider multiple options. Doesn't necessarily have to be, like you said, a digital sign or a PXO. While granted, we won't be able to install another automated speed enforcement camera, we are able to work with our partners, with the police and other divisions, to look at specific actions that we can do at all the former locations and also planned locations. So you mentioned that particular one, it was planned for it. It does qualify as being eligible for introducing countermeasures, initiatives to help reduce speed. So it doesn't necessarily have to be exclusive to the 91 measures. It could be beyond that, and we would be happy to engage with you and your office to seek your input as well. But we will be working with the police and our other partners to put together a coordinated plan that we'll present that will identify all the potential measures we can do at the former locations where there used to be an automated speed enforcement camera.
Thanks. I don't think it's a funding issue. I also don't think it's a signage issue, and I think ASCs would have been helpful in identifying some data points to make the case, but I don't think we need to in this location. I guess what I'm talking about is what Councillor Kassar was saying earlier was the engineering of our road systems so that they're safe by physically making alterations is ultimately what's going to make this area safer. So we recognize that, for instance, the turning lane there goes all the way back to the access, right? And so that during peak traffic moments that you have cars that are going to be lining up for a long way. And so during those times, traffic is actually slow, relatively speaking, because there's a huge volume of traffic. So in this way, traffic is actually helping to control the safety of the area. There's still nowhere for anyone to cross, mind you, but it's helping, right? Except when, of course, people cut through on side streets. But that's a separate point. What I'm saying, though, is during those periods when there's not physical or engineered or car way that is stopping people from speeding, people just blaze that street. And so what I'm saying is there's no amount of signage that's going to stop them from doing it. We did a road project there, which I can't remember the name of anymore. There's a certain kind of road project we do in the city. It's not reconstruction, it's some other kind. And we did something there, but unfortunately when we did it, we didn't redesign the road so that it feels like you should drive 40. It still feels like you should drive 70. So if you're driving 40, you feel weird, even though the sign says 40, right? So what I'm trying to get at here is, how is this going to end up with engineered solutions? And no offense, enforcement's also not going to do it. Enforcement is temporary, and you really can't enforce very well there because there's no public property from which to enforce. There's no public right-of-way there. It's just private property and then the road. And in this very narrow situation. So I guess I'm saying is that's an example of a situation where I don't think this addresses the actual ask of council. And so I do think when he comes back with some more direct solutions, we need to see engineered solutions and then like have ways of actually transforming these spaces so that simple things like kids getting across the street to go to school can happen, neighbors can hear one another on the sidewalk, we can find ways to decrease the speeding there. And again, I think a solution that could work is, again, working with parking folks and other folks to do something. But I'm not sure this gets where I understood the motion was supposed to be going.
Well, through the council, I'd be happy to continue this conversation offline where we can look at the specific circumstances and conditions of that location to determine if, in fact, yes, there may be some engineering. I'm not discounting engineering. I'm suggesting that we have many options available to do, including engineering options. But I'd be happy to have that conversation to see exactly what would be suitable and what would be most effective for that particular location.
Yeah, I've tried to have that conversation. We'll keep having it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Through the Vice Chair, if I could, just a couple of questions related to the appendices in the report. And I think this one is over to Superintendent Hennick. The report references data that is being used to identify or prioritize work that's being done through Division 3 and a new device that can use radar that tracks current activity, volume, etc. And it also references the existence of high-risk areas throughout the city. Could you comment on that data, where it stands today, how it may be made publicly available? You know just as much as I do how much residents identify speed through areas, whether they're neighborhood streets or in the case of Main Street and King Street, where we often hear in the summertime the drag races taking place really late in the middle of the night. Could you comment on that in terms of the public availability of that information?
I don't, well, I'll speak to how the complaints come in first and how we obtain our stats. So some of the stats we have through the city, some of the stats we get from our collision accident support services section. So we've subcontracted the reporting to our collision reporting centers. They have fantastic data sets that are sent to us monthly, reporting back on data, but that's after the fact. And most of that's collision data. As far as complaints from citizens and from councillors, those make it through to our traffic department. Those are, again, assembled by our crime and information and analysis unit, and then summaries sent back to our traffic units for deployment of our limited resources into the areas that were the highest complaints are received. Okay. And as far as the availability of those data sets, I'm not sure. I can find out and get back to you following this meeting, but I don't have that available.
I'd be curious to see it, and if it's possible through Hamilton Police Services in conjunction with your partnership with the city traffic team, as we're moving through our Vision Zero strategy and implementation plan, if there's data coming from HPS that says, you know, the following streets are the consistent ones where we're seeing speeding, where our new device is tracking, counting, and measuring very clearly excessive speeding taking place, not just in Division 3, but perhaps in other areas, or maybe make the case that that same device be deployed in other areas in the city to help us get in real-time accurate counts, I think would be helpful. And then also from the proactive perspective, Vice Chair, I think you mentioned children in schools, and the area that we hear the most in the Ward 3 office is speeding in school zones. in the lower city, and that, parents have been requesting special meetings with our road safety team in order to look at it from a technical review perspective. How do we need to redesign these roads? Are there any immediate interactions or interventions we can make? From an enforcement perspective, that is always the third question from parents, which is, what are Hamilton Police Services going to do to make sure that drivers are compliant to a 30-kilometer speed in school zones? And can that be prioritized in terms of enforcement? Can you speak a little bit to that in terms of what we see in the Appendix B and what might come forward in terms of proactive monitoring and enforcement specifically in school zones?
Yep, I can tell you already that our service prioritizes school zones as far as our enforcement efforts. Our traffic team and our divisional patrol officers work and do enforcement efforts in the school zones. The report, I believe, mentions 8 locations for where the ASC devices were, and then 4 additional ones. But I believe actually there's a total of almost 80 that this council has approved, and which includes school zones, and the director can speak to it more, but each one of those 80 locations is actually qualifies for dedicated enforcement efforts through the Road Safety Initiatives Fund. Regardless of those efforts, we do every year, we partner with the school boards and do back to school education and do enforcement in and around school zones, completely recognizing the need for ongoing enforcement at each of those locations. And I'm not sure if the director wants to speak to a little bit further.
So all of the locations where there was an ASC camera are eligible. It was a rotational location program, and so in total there was over 80, I think 89. So the locations where an ASC camera was situated at one point would be eligible for enhanced enforcement or targeted enforcement, maybe that's a better word. And we would work with Hamilton Police Services in allocating those funds to have an effective targeted program.
Thank you. And final question on that one, through you, Vice Chair, is if those traffic study devices that are referenced in Appendix B that are currently deployed in Division 3, if those could be considered by staff in conjunction with Hamilton Police Services, as it relates to school zones specifically, recognizing we can no longer use ASEs in school zones, but the area of the child pedestrian being the top tier of hierarchy of need from a Vision Zero lens perspective, and we have continuous reported speeding going on in our school zones, could we level set some data and get some clarity on whether or not that's a perceived sense in our community or something that's fact-based? Could there be an argument made to increase the device deployment?
So I can speak to part of it. We just recently purchased 2 additional devices. So now each of the patrol divisions have access to, it's referred to as a Black Cat data. And so that Black Cat device can be deployed at counselor's request at a complaint location where we can install the device. It can monitor traffic for a period of time and determine if the complaints as we believe it to be happening are factually happening like we believe it is, or is it just an anomaly? And so then based on the data, we can then deploy our resources if the data supports the deployment of the resource.
Excellent.
And so that's available in each of the 3 divisions. We started with the Mountain, and I'm not sure where we are in the procurement phase, but I believe that that was moved forward over a month ago. So
Thank you. I'll take back the chair and then see that the speakers list has grown. Next is Councillor Taddison and then Councillor Pauls.
Just a question for the officer from Hamilton Police Services. Something you said caught my ear. You were speaking to Councillor Wang. You just said that we're catching impaired drivers at a rate that's increased by 3%. And can you expand or unpack that for me? Are you enforcing more with ride programs?
No, what I would say is that there's ebbs and flows to how we catch it. Many of them are through lookout programs. So citizens observing erratic driving in our community and calling into us, and then are responding, and then catching individuals who are driving under the influence of either alcohol or drugs. So not a direct correlation to ride programs, if you will.
Okay.
It's a balance. It's both.
Okay, thanks. For me, that's actually trending in the wrong direction because, you know, I see it. I'm wondering if there's any relationship because, like, when I'm gassing up at 11 or 10:30 at night, I'm looking at the pump and there's an advertisement right there. Hey, get beer here at the station or at the, you know, right inside up till 11 p.m. So I'm just wondering if there's any correlation with that now that they've opened up beer sales and it's more accessible.
I can't speak to it, but I know through the chair, like the chair, I've heard her speak previously about the economy and the impacts of the economy. And when our economy is not doing well, incidents of impaired driving have increased. So I don't know what the cause is, why impaired driving is increasing in our community. There's many factors. Access to alcohol could be one of those factors, but I can't speak to it.
Hey, thanks for your answers. Take care.
Thank you, Councillor Tattison. Next up, we have Councillor Pauls.
Thank you. This is the first time I spoke. I've been listening to road safety, how we keep students safe. My question is to Superintendent David Hennick. In my area, and I'm sure it's everywhere, there's young people on scooters, on little motorcycles, going 30 kilometers per hour without helmets, crossing. They sometimes go on the sidewalk, most of them are on the road, and they have caused accidents. Also, there's report that hospitals are seeing more and more of these injuries. Matter of fact, I don't know what it was, I think a month ago, there was a young person that was hit by a car because of these scooters. I'm wondering, Superintendent David Hennick, I know you very well, you do your job very well. Have you had people call directly to the service to say, how do we stop this?
So thank you for your question, Councillor, and through your chair. So yes, we have had that. We've probably spent the last few months creating and obtaining materials to help educate our community. I know we did a public awareness campaign almost 3 weeks ago or so. Sergeant O'Hagan is here from our traffic safety unit. And Mike, are you able to speak further on the enforcement efforts and some of the offenses? So I'm just going to ask Mike to come up for a second.
Thank you, Superintendent. That's great, thank you.
Good afternoon, through the chair. We have had a number of complaints through both city councilors, the crime manager's office, the public in regards to e-scooters. We did do a social media campaign about 3 weeks ago. I can tell you that in conjunction with our partners with the city and our strategic roads safety committee meeting with public health, they have raised concerns. And I know us and our city partners have raised these concerns to both the Catholic board and the public board in relation to education campaigns that can take place in September and in the early year to hopefully get the message out about how dangerous these e-scooters are and about the regulations surrounding them. So we do believe that an education piece is very important and needs to happen, as well as some enforcement that happens as well around that.
Thank you. Can I ask another question through the chair? When an electric motorcycle, and they're really small, I went to someone's house and there were 4 of them on the road going, and they make a loud noise. Are they allowed on the road, and are they supposed to be of age? What's the age, first of all? Even on scooters, what is the age that can use? And do they need helmets? All those 3 questions.
Yeah, of course, through the chair. I'll speak to the e-scooters first. Anyone under 16, it is illegal for them to ride an e-scooter. Regardless of helmets, road use, where they use it, it is illegal for them to use. This is commonly not known by the public, and it's not advertised when they're sold. In regards to helmets, anyone under the age of 18 is required to wear a helmet on pretty much any moving device or vehicle on the roadway. With regards to e-motorcycles, e-bikes, motorized wheelchairs. Each one of them carries with their own regulations and kind of directives that require various things such as insurance, helmet use, what helmets are considered valid, and what speeds are considered appropriate for those particular devices. So to get into the nitty-gritty of that, that's far more in depth, but each one of those devices does carry their own regulations.
I thank you for that. And just when we talk about road safety, we have to consider that big time, honestly. In my ward, and I know probably you have it in your ward, I see kids, they're not even 16, 2 of them on the scooter, whipping by. And sometimes they're on the sidewalk and I don't see them. And but I've had so many complaints and I really don't know. I'm wondering, does the survey keep us stats? How many scooters are out there? How many electric motorcycle? How many complaints? Do we have stats for that as well?
Through the chair, I'm not sure if we have stats particularly linked to that. We do obviously keep stats related to moving violations. I don't know necessarily if they're captured in relation to e-scooter violations.
Okay, thank you. I would like to know, and you know, when I get a call, I said, well, I'll send the service there, and obviously they don't know where to go, they are gone, and so it's, education's so important, I think, and I think we're missing something, so I do appreciate you educating our public. Thank you.
So just a PSA that anybody should be reporting concerns of underage e-scooter users to Hamilton Police Services directly through the multiple reporting channels, so you don't have to go through your city councillor. Thank you. Okay, next up we have Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. So I apologize in advance whether I'm getting the 2 reports mixed up, but is it in this report where it stated that while we're trending down for injuries and fatalities, we're still above the provincial average? Through the chair.
Through the chair, I don't have that answer here really available, but I can certainly check. I don't recall us referencing the provincial average, but that doesn't mean it's not in there. So
It is.
if I may just get back to you on that one.
I'm feeling very confident that it is.
Okay, thank you.
But as a consequence of that response, I'll take my question offline, which was to ask if the director wished to opine on the circumstances inflating our outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. So we already have a mover and seconder. We are at the point to receive this information report, so show of hand vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that carries on to 7.2, PW 26044, which is our 2025 annual wastewater treatment bypass and overflow report. Mover and seconder for this one. Thank you, Councillor Pauls and Councillor Jackson. Any discussion on this report, bypass and overflow? Yeah, Councillor Huang.
Thank you. I had sent a couple of notes to Director Shane McCauley because I didn't understand like where the separation was, specifically in the Red Hill Valley, so I was really glad about that. But I know that the 2 systems, the CSOs, like the overflows were very different from, and all of that is all taken into consideration when it comes to this bypass and overflow report. Is that right? Because I think that there are multiple lines of business that the wastewater team do. And so I wonder if you could just be a little more open and clear about that, because in the Red Hill Valley in particular, there have been complaints about specifically a CSO overflow over by the Green Hill area. So I just wanted to get, perhaps you could just rehash that little conversation that we had, Director.
Through the chair, happy to do that. Thank you for the question. So we were discussing some questions about our communications update about our TSS, total suspended solids compliance limits, which is very separate from this overflow and bypass report. The total suspended solids compliance is really about the quality of effluent, where our overflow and bypasses is about volume of overflow and bypasses that go out to it. So When we have combined sewer overflows in the system, that really is to protect basements from flooding, infrastructure from being damaged. And so we do have those at our various combined sewer overflow outfalls, like the Green Hill. This report is really focused on the wastewater treatment plants, Dundas and at Woodward. And so Dundas, as the report shows, we had no overflows or bypasses there. And at Woodward, we did have kind of our standard overflows and bypasses that we'd experience year over year. So they are two very different issues.
Thank you, Chair. It was quite illuminating having that one-on-one conversation with Director McCauley on this, because it's really hard sometimes to get all of these different types of reports come forward, and then it's hard to figure out, does that influence the other, and then that influence that, especially because they're all kind of going into the same waterway. So it was very helpful to get not only the total suspended solids report, but also this report as well, essentially saying that, yes, we've had overflow events, but they've been managed and they've been managed well. So thank you again, Director McCauley, for explaining that to me, and thank you to the water team for doing this report for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Huang. There's no other speakers. It's been moved and seconded for committee for approval. Show of hand vote to receive the information. Thank you. Any opposed? Seeing none, that carries. On to 7.3 PW 26037A, amendments to proposed permanent closure and sale of portion of untraveled road allowance Overfield Street in Dundas. Over to you, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. So through you, Chair, we're just receiving the information report now, but when we get to this item, I believe it's the first item under Section 9. This is an amendment that is required to be moved at that time. Perfect. And so just want to thank staff for recommending this approval. I think separating the decision to not have a road allowance and the decision about what to do with those lands now that they're not a road allowance, those are two separate processes that may have different public consultation or may different considerations. So really appreciate the initiative of staff to say, well, we want to kind of maybe take our initial recommendation and look at that differently, and really appreciated that. And so when this comes forward, we'll talk about it more on the site-specific case, but I appreciate this memo. Happy to move receiving it.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Alex Wilson, seconded by Councillor Beattie. Thank you both. Show of hands, those all in favor of receiving the information. No one opposed. It carries on to public hearings as required under the city's bylaw number 14-204. A public meeting is required for 2 public hearings today. Notice of the public meetings was provided and posted on the City of Hamilton's website. Notices advise that anyone whose lands are prejudicially affected may appear before committee. First up is 8.1 PW 26055, which is a proposed permanent closure of the portion of the road that we just discussed. Clerks have advised me that there's no individuals that are pre-registered to delegate on this portion of the public hearing report. But at this point, I will call out for any members in the public wishing to address committee on this item. Oh, thank you for clarifying, Councillor Alex Wilson. This is a slightly different portion of the lands. This is a portion of untraveled road allowance on Brock Street. Brock Street, not Overfield. Thank you. That's very important to clarify. I hope I didn't cause any anxiety for folks in the gallery. So again, anybody in the public wishing to address committee on this item? For a second time, anybody in the gallery hoping to address committee? And third time, I don't see anybody. There's nobody in chambers looking for discussion on this, so we will move forward to a mover and seconder to close the public portion of the meeting. Thank you, Councillor Alex Wilson, seconded by Councillor Huang. Electronic vote to close the public portion of the meeting. That carries, and then we'll use the same mover and seconder to put the report on the floor. Councillor Alex Wilson.
Thank you. Just noting that the recommendation this report came after the last one, so this recommendation kind of reads with the standard now separating those two processes. So just noting that for folks who kind of are maybe don't have the report right in front of them, that this is closing a portion of a road allowance that goes directly into Spencer Creek. I think we're all on the same page there that we're not going to build that road. But then what happens next with that? Is there a potential for infill? What's the environmental consideration? Are there floodplain considerations? All that work still actually needs to be done. And so we get a report back within 24 months as the recommendation says. So supportive of the recommendations, really thank staff for both their due diligence and kind of catching these unclosed right-of-ways and kind of doing some housekeeping there, but then also how do we move forward with kind of completing our communities, thinking about these little assets.
Thank you, Councillor. No further speakers, so it's before committee for electronic vote. Councillor Jackson with a thumbs up. That carries. And then finally, a mover and seconder to receive the correspondence related to this item. We'll keep the same mover and seconder. Any discussion on the correspondence? Seeing none, that's a show of hand vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that carries. Thank you. On to 8.2 PW 26072, proposed permanent closure and sale of a portion of unassumed alley abutting 154 Mountainville Avenue, Hamilton in Ward 7. The clerk has advised that there's 2 individuals who are pre-registered to delegate on this one. First up is Bill King from Hamilton Independent Alley Initiative. So Bill, it's the same for delegations. You have 5 minutes to address committee. You'll hear a ding at the 4-minute mark. Thank you.
Thank you, and hi. Can I ask you a question? Am I allowed to show the committee 2 pictures? That came up once before in the previous council, and someone objected it was a prop.
Oh, just 1 second. I'm clarifying with the clerk. The images weren't sent to the clerk in advance.
No.
No. So then we're not technically able to do it right now. Thank you.
I'll just tell you about them. I want this to come in at 5 minutes, so I wrote it down and I'll read it. I'm back again to put in a word for the city's alley network and to urge you to look at alleys as a resource and an asset. On the application actually before you, I wasn't able to prepare as well as I would have liked to. I went to see the alley in question, and the sketch of the materials doesn't reflect the actual situation. What has happened is that the area indicated in the materials to be a section of the alley to be closed has actually already been appropriated by an adjacent property and incorporated into the lawn, and a fence put up to prevent access up the alley. It's not possible to see what's happened to the rest of the alley, which was originally designed to connect Mountville Avenue and Inverness. What appears to have happened is that some parts of the alley are intact and other parts have been appropriated by other adjacent property owners. In fact, this situation seems to have become a trend in this particular neighborhood on the west side of Upper Wentworth Street. It is actually quite a contrast to the area on the east side of Wentworth, where there are some beautiful intact alleys. If I may, and I may not, I'd like to show you a photo of one which runs between Concession and Fennel near East 25th. It serves its purpose and it's relatively well used. I also printed a map of the city's alleys. I don't know whether you've all seen it, but the blue lines show the alleys across the city, and you can see that in many places the network has been preserved, but in other cases it's being cut up willy-nilly, which prevents people from using the alleys for their intended purposes and simply creates blind alleys which go nowhere and become trouble spots. The way the system works is, this is a bit disjointed, but I'm sure you can all stay with me. The way the system works is that the purchaser's lawyer examines title to the property. I know when I was on the Heritage Committee, sometimes people will say, well, we didn't know there was an easement, we didn't know there was this, we didn't know there was that. But the purchaser's lawyer examines the titles, and if the lawyer fails to do it correctly, the purchaser can file a claim with his title insurance company or the lawyer's professional indemnity. I just want to try to make the point that it's a problem. It's not a problem that the city of Hamilton has to provide a solution for. It's problems with title, and they do come up now and then, and it's the purchaser's lawyer's responsibility to make sure that they have title to the land, and not something to be remedied by perhaps giving them a benefit at the expense of the alley network. I wanted to just say a word on bike lanes. I think bikes are great, and I use mine, but not as much as I used to now that I'm 64. It becomes a bit more of a challenge, and I often simply walk. And I put it online to see what people's reaction was. Think of alleys as bike lanes for pedestrians. The typical comment, I got about 200 likes, a very, very scientific poll, but the typical comment was along the lines of, what a good idea. I love my alley. I love walking my dog. I love seeing kids play in it. One even said a brilliant idea. I don't think it's a particularly brilliant idea. It's just seems to be a fairly obvious thing that we might preserve our laneways. A couple were negative, and they were along the lines, alleys are full of drug addictions, drug addicts, and nobody is safe in them. There's some truth to that, but not as much as many people think. The observation applies mostly to the alleys in our city core, and as I said, well, I use them very often, and when there are drug users in the alleys, unfortunately, they're so debilitated, and sometimes they're frankly quite close to the end. Their last thing they're going to do is threaten anyone, but what I emphasize is maybe you can take a longer-term view and think of the future when hopefully the problems we're facing now are a thing of the past, when crime is lower, when we don't have people near death in alleys and public places, when poisonous drugs are something of a past time. And I think they'll marvel at our, frankly, that we endured it for so long, or we tolerated it for so long. Anyway, think of a world where a future generation will have a nice alley network, and I don't have time to get into the advantages of alleys, but I think they're fairly obvious. Let's not cut it up. Let's let people know that I'm not saying you have to go and do anything with it. If there's someone encroaching on it, it doesn't have to be changed immediately, but that you can't just come to the city and get a transfer to you because you are encroaching on an alley. We want to keep the network intact. Okay, so that was my message I wanted to bring to you again.
Thank you, Bill. There's no questions. Thank you for your presentation on this public hearing portion.
Thank you, Ms. Nan. Thank
Next
you.
up, we have Mark Harrington. Hi, Mark.
Go ahead. Thank you to the chair and committee members for this opportunity to speak to you. It's interesting to be here this afternoon and see how diverse and complex the work you're doing is. I don't have anything very formal in terms of regulations or anything, but in terms of the alleys, my property backs onto an alley. And, you know, earlier in this meeting you were talking about from the eyes of a child. Well, consider an alley from the eyes of your backyard, having a 4-foot chain link fence, or maybe no fence at all, and an alley that goes behind it. Now, the original use, the intended use of these alleys was back in the day when they were originated, this was garbage. These were service lanes. They were not intended for public transit. We've got $1 million worth of infrastructure in front of our houses, streetlights and sidewalks that are level. The people who live on alleys, attention to alleys is negative attention. People going through the alley is not good for the community. You know, the alley my friend spoke to there, it's been closed for 40 years. I live 200 feet from it. And I look after the alley behind my house myself. I've been doing it for 25 years. It's about 300 feet. It was a jungle when I moved in 2000. But once I started cleaning it up, then the other neighbors started doing that, and it's a blind alley. Blind alleys are good because the people who need them, I have a garage, which is built on proper permit in 1964. So do other people along the alley from me. We need that access. We would rather close the alley. But the houses on 25-foot lots are 5 feet apart. I can't get access to my garage from the front, not possible. So, you know, little communities build in the alleys. We know each other. We know who's supposed to be there, who's not supposed to be there. If people want to buy them up, if people want to, from my place, roughly the middle of the block to Concession Street, this alley used to run from Mountville to Concession that I'm on. Those people have all just taken up their halves. They got some paper from Henry Merling when he was an alderman that said it's okay, if you guys remember him. You know, so it's a nice little community, and it wasn't intended for public travel. It wasn't. There's no lights. There's no sidewalks. There's room for one car to drive down at a time. If, like, you couldn't pass 2 cars in the amount of public space. So, yeah, an alley initiative is not welcome. I don't want people, you know, you guys closed, I don't know, there was complaints back in the day of Yulee Stairs being an escape route for people who are doing break and enters and making their way back down the mountain. Alleys become escape routes for crime and that sort of thing. We want to be able to, our children be safe in our backyards. We don't want someone passing the other side of our 4-foot chain link fence. They can be out front. You know, you're doing a good job as it is. When the community gets together and wants to take the alley, they do it. And you guys don't want it. You got a $4 billion infrastructure deficit. You want to start looking after alleys? I just got a few points here. Let me check and see, make sure I've sort of covered everything I want to say. You know, yeah, the alleys were service lanes, and they should remain that when they need to be for access to properties. But public activity should take place in public. There are trails and parks, and you know, the other side of my house looks onto a park. You want to be in my alley? Well, I shouldn't call it my alley, it's the alley. But I think you guys get the gist. If it was your backyard and your children playing out there, you want to be able to let preschool kids, or even, I mean, I think technically the oldest age you're allowed to let them go to the park is 8 or 10 as far as the law goes. So it's just uncomfortable. It's not welcome. And really just, I guess, consider the people who are adjacent to the alleys, who have properties adjacent to the alleys. You know, it's not about greed. It's not about wanting something we don't deserve. We're looking after them. We're maintaining them. They're a part of a small community. Like Hamilton is built up of little small communities and neighborhoods, maybe more so than a community. So thanks very much. That's really all I had to say.
Thank you so much. There's no questions for you. Oh, yes, Councillor Paul.
Hello.
Hold on one second, Councillor. Let me turn on your microphone.
Hello, Mark. I've talked to you many times.
Yes.
So
Nice
it's so
to see
nice
you.
that you came to delegate. Is this your first time?
Well, the first time in a long time. I think I spoke to something maybe 25 years ago.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you're here. I'm just wondering, so do you, I'm going to ask staff as well. I know we have, in my ward, Ward 7, I know we have a lot of alleyways, and
Yes.
some of them are unassumed and some are assumed. And the different, some don't look after their alleys. You know, so I want to ask you, if you had a chance to buy your portion, would you consider it?
Well, in my particular, you know what? Yes, but with the caveat that because I have a garage,
Yeah.
the only way to get to that garage is through the alley. And as I described the alley, they're only 1 car lane wide, technically. So if I was to give, if my neighbor behind me was to get his half of the alley, I couldn't access my garage. I'd only have half a car lane.
So in that, yeah, I agree.
So that's what's happened from my house, which is roughly across from George L. Armstrong School,
Right.
To Concession Street. Nobody wanted that access. They didn't
Right.
have garages. They didn't have that kind of thing, and they all just filled it in and took their halves.
So Mark, you take care of your alley, I know, because I've
Yes.
been to your place and all that. There's some alleys that there's poison ivy. The city doesn't cut the grass, so doesn't, and people are not looking after it. So
That's right, yeah.
So we have to. I have at least 69 alleys in my ward.
Right.
So I've got lots of alleys. So I think the city's looking to a solution here. We have unassumed, we have assumed, and people expect if it's city property that they should clean them up, right? So I appreciate you cleaning your back. So
Right.
we have to have a discussion with staff what we're
Yeah,
going
my
to do.
experience has been that when I moved in, it was an absolute jungle. You couldn't walk through it.
Right. So you-
and the city wouldn't do anything at all.
Right.
At one point, I had a truck abandoned in the alley. The city wouldn't come and wouldn't do anything. I had to tow it onto the street for the city to take it away. So, you know, they used to be service lanes, and they used to be maintained according to the woman who used to live next door to me, who is, well, she's passed away, but she's there for almost 100 years, whatever. She was born in that house. And she said, yeah, when she was a kid, that's how people accessed. There was a community wells. There wasn't even water in the city yet when my house was built. I had the well was in my backyard. She could tell me where it was, point to where it was. And, you know, garbage was picked up, coal was delivered for heating and so on, and services were brought in. They're meant to be service lanes. They're not,
Right.
you know, they were never intended as public pathways.
That's
and,
right.
and, you know, if we get people there at night, you know, we don't want that. People, you know.
So a lot of,
But yeah, most people, if you could, you know, I don't know how much you'd charge for half an alley spot. Like, give it to people. They'll take it. They'd probably pay the legal fees.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think what you're doing is already fine. Let them take it.
so we have a dilemma. How do we, some taxpayers, they say we pay our tax and our alley is a mess. The city doesn't come. So we have a dilemma here where we have to figure out what we're going to do with the assumed and the unassumed alleys.
Yeah, I don't
So-
know what an assumed alley would be. I guess you could plow the snow there or something. I don't know. Mine's unassumed. But it seems abandoned in terms of back in the old days.
That's right.
The city did maintain it because it was used as a service lane, but now it's not, so it's been abandoned to the people who live adjacent it. And if we're going to have responsibility for it, which we end up, it's pretty much foisted on us if we want to have access to our garages and things like that, then, you know, there should be some consideration given for that. And yeah, the idea of an alley, we don't want people in the alleys. It's
Thank
just
you.
not good.
Okay.
You know?
Thank you, and thank you
Thanks
for
very much.
coming. Thank you, Mark.
There's no further
All good.
questions at this time. Thank you for your
Thanks very
delegation
much.
and for coming to this public hearing portion of the agenda. Are there any other members of the public wishing to address committee on this report? Second time? Third time, seeing nobody come forward. Could I have a mover and seconder on Councillor Pauls and Councillor Beattie, thank you, to close this portion of the public hearing? Oh, my apologies. We're going to use those movers and seconders first to receive the delegations, which is a show of hand vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, that carries. And then next, we need the same mover and seconder to close the public meeting, and that's an electronic vote. Thumbs up from Councillor Jackson.
There it is. Oh,
Alex? Councillor Alex Wilson, if you could vote. And it's a thumbs up. Okay, that carries to close the public portion of the public meeting, thank you. On to the report, we'll go with the same mover and seconder to put the report on the floor. Any discussion on the report? Councillor Pars, you had indicated earlier you had some questions for staff on this report. Now would be the time.
okay, thank you. So the assumed alleyway of Monteville is, if they buy it, is it blocked by any other residents to go through? Or?
Thank you for your question, Councillor. So currently, my name is Dipankar Sharma, Acting Director for Engineering Services. So the current, the alleyway that is in question is roughly around 70 square meters, and it is being asked as an addition to driveway widening. To answer your question directly, so the ask from the residents is that 70 square meters be added to the existing portion of the property. The rest of the alleyway currently has been blocked through, as the delegates were talking about. So this portion is the report currently just talks about assuming that portion of the road into the applicant's property.
Okay. So there hasn't really been, I just read that there hasn't been any opposition, just few, and it's been addressed.
Through the chair to the councillor, there has been no opposition but support from the neighbors.
Okay, thank you.
There's no further questions then. The report is before committee for approval. And that's an electronic vote. Oh, carries, thank you, with one opposition. Onwards to next item on the agenda, which is 9.1 PW 26037, proposed permanent closure and sale of a portion of untraveled road allowance on Overfield Street, Dundas, deferred from our May 4th committee meeting. Councillor Alex Wilson will be the mover, and may I please get a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Huang, and over to you, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. I'm sure it will come as no surprise that I will be amending the motion based on the language that was contained in the information report earlier. This just means that what we're doing as a city is we're retaining the lands. Corporate real estate is going to, look at various things like the environmental heritage, the developability of the site, the potential for a trail connection to a trail that is behind the site, as well as some of the feedback we've heard from residents directly. That comes to a future GIC meeting is the language in that recommendation, in that amending language within the next 24 months, as I believe the timeline staff set out. If there's a public consultation, like that is a report back, that's some homework being done. That doesn't have to be a decision point. That could be an opportunity to say, okay, these are the two options, we're gonna take them out for public consultation. It's either gonna be A or B. But to get a little sense of that homework done, staff are gonna get some costing and get some review done about what's possible on this site. Otherwise, we're not going to build a road there in the short term, so we can take this off our books for the road allowance piece. And I think that conversation about what exciting thing could happen next in this space can stay alive and continue. And we certainly have some engaged residents excited for what that potential could look like, or certainly wanting to stay involved in those conversations. So happy to provide any other materials, but given they were in the information report, I'm assuming we're all clear on the amending language.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson, and your seconder for the amendment. Okay, we can continue that way. And then next up, we have Councillor Crutch.
Just a small housekeeping item that the report title should be changed to remove the words "and sale of." So it should be proposed permanent closure of a portion of untraveled road allowance if we're not selling it, just to make
Elsie
sure.
McIntosh says yes. Staff, any conference on that one? Yeah.
Hi, Jackie Kennedy, General Manager of Public Works. I think it is a sale. It's a sale from one asset owner in the city to another. So it's not the future sale, but I will ask Acting Director Sharma to confirm that.
Thank you, Jackie, through the chair to the councillor. So Jackie is correct. It is the transfer of asset from transportation to the real estate office. So hence there is, if you look at the title of the report, it's PW 26037A, which is a memo, and it has some language redacted and additions that were made that Councillor Alex Wilson talked about.
Okay, no further speakers on the speakers list. Oh, back to Councillor Alex Wilson.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, just on the note of that question, I think through this application, I want to really thank staff and the delegates for coming out. I think that created an opportunity of, frankly, friction in the last report. I'm sorry I wasn't there, but that friction, I really want to just thank how everyone responded to that. Said, hey, is this working? How can we slow down, take an evaluation to this? And so maybe just a question on that reflection as we're thinking about naming these things, as we're thinking about maybe that two-part recommendation with the transfer, just are there any other continuous improvement pieces ongoing with respect to the closure of alleyways, the naming of this, the communicating of this that are ongoing, or was this kind of file specific? To me, it seemed like across the couple files, there was some continuous improvement going on, and just maybe if staff have further plans for that, I think the name and comment falls into that. But if we're all clear today that we're not selling these lands publicly, I'm happy to proceed. But just maybe if staff could speak about what else is happening here.
Through the chair, thank you for your question, Councillor. Yes, we are clear. If you look at the amendment, it is as exactly in two parts. First is top up and close, and the second part is a feasibility assessment where we will be bringing back a report within 24 months.
Thank you.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. We're moving forward with the amendment just to make sure that the public sees the language as well, and just ask the LC to put it up on the screen. And then we can move to our electronic vote. So I want to make sure everybody sees what we're voting on. Okay, there we go. Okay, that the application from the City of Hamilton's Corporate Real Estate Office to permanently close and retain for review a portion of the untraveled road allowance known as Overfield Drive, Dundas, situated between 54 Tally-Ho and 2 Walnut Grove, Dundas. Subject lands as shown in Appendix A attached to Report PW 26037 be approved, subject to the following conditions. And there you will see that Corporate Real Estate of the Planning and Economic Division be authorized and directed to retain the subject lands. So I just wanted to make sure that the public in the gallery and online see that it is being retained by the city and is not about it being sold further, as the amendment has been moved and seconded. So it's before committee for electronic vote now. Big thumbs up from Councillor Jackson. And the vote's up. That carries. Thank you. On to receipt of the correspondence. Same mover and seconder. And that's a show of hand vote. All those in favor? That carries. Thank you. On to 9.2, which is PW 26042, Municipal Class Environmental Assessment and Conceptual Design of Main and Whitney Water Pumping Stations in Wards 1, 12, and 13. May I please have a mover and seconder to put the report on the floor? Councillor Wilson, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Crutch. Thank you both. Any discussion on, sorry? Maureen Wilson. Yeah. Any discussion on the report? Seeing none, then we are moving towards electronic vote. All those in favor of approving or against, please indicate through your e-vote. Councillor Jackson's thumbs up. Councillor Alex Wilson is also voting. Councillor McMeekin is a thumbs up. That carries. On to motions. We have many of them, so I will encourage my colleagues, if you can, as best you can, keep it concise. I know that there's a number of motions that mean a lot to your communities that are being moved, but just want to encourage you all to be as concise as possible. First up is 10.1, planting 31 trees at Glendale Golf Course, 401 Mount Albion Road in Ward 5. Councillor Francis, if you can please introduce your motion and seconder, please.
Thanks, Chair Nan. That's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Beatty. Therefore, be it resolved, A, that the supply installation of 31 trees on Glendale Golf Course, 401 Mount Albion Road, be funded from the Ward 5 Capital Discretionary Account at an upset limit, including contingency not to exceed $7,762, be approved. And then B, that the General Manager of Public Works or delegate be authorized and directed to approve and execute any and all agreed agreements and ancillary documents with such terms and conditions in a form satisfactory to the city solicitor. And just to speak to this very briefly, I just want to provide some context and clarity on why I'm bringing this forward. So residents on Mount Albion Road, they've raised ongoing concerns about golf balls flying from golfers on the first tee box and landing on the road, on vehicles, on nearby properties. There's also been many close calls involving people on the road. And the reason this has become more of an issue lately is that the city recently removed and pruned some trees from the road allowance, and those trees actually acted as a natural buffer. And unfortunately, many of them were dead and in a condition that had to be addressed. We had no choice but to address them. And then subsequently, after meeting with staff and representatives from Glendale Golf Course, it became clear that these trees within the city's right-of-way, the terrain there is just simply not feasible to replace the trees in that exact same location. It's essentially a cliff. So the only practical solution was to work with the Glendale Golf Course, plant mature trees along the edge of their property, near where the city trees were moved, which is slightly flatter. But I do want to thank Glendale for being a willing partner on this solution. They've also taken some steps of their own by modifying the tee box area and fairway to help address this problem. But they also acknowledge and recognize that those measures alone are not perfect either. But this motion for planting 31 trees will help restore that natural buffer and also contribute to the urban tree canopy goals. Thank you very much.
Thank you. First up, we have Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. I support the motion, but I am curious because they're not going to be planted on the public right-of-way. Do we have any capacity to instruct about their care and their watering or not, through the chair?
Through the chair, Cynthia Graham, Director of Environmental Services. The forestry team has been in contact with the management at the golf course. The golf course groundskeepers are well-versed in tree care throughout their golf course, but if there's additional supports that are needed, we can certainly work with them and continue to support as needed. I'm not sure that this includes maintenance of these trees, but if there are concerns about their care, then we can follow up.
Thank you. My concern is just those initial years of how important watering is and whether they're, as you say, they're well-versed with respect to trees, and I hope and trust they're well-versed on that aspect as well. Thank you.
Next up, we have Councillor Kassar.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Nan, and I'll also support the motion, but just thought I'd take an opportunity to remind everyone, as I had a private conversation with the mover. I think we're all aware of Mr. Fairbanks, who has been working to plant trees and there's been a lot of dialogue on that. Here's an opportunity potentially on private property for those trees to be sourced from non-city money, but I respect what the mover's trying to do here. I think it's that's a good solution in a unique situation, but just wanted to put that reminder out there. Thanks.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded and discussed and before committee for electronic vote with a thumbs up from Councillor Jackson. Councillor Pauls is indicating a thumbs up. And that carries. Thank you. Next up is 10.2, removal of speed cushions on Moxley Drive in Ward 6. Councillor Jackson, if you could move your motion. I understand your seconder is Councillor Taddison. You're going to move them there and then move them to East 45th Street? Just joking. Go.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Nan. I'm so glad the clerk put my two motions ahead of the Ward 2 motion fest that is following. So I appreciate that, Elsie McIntosh. Moved by myself, and I don't see my seconder currently visually. All right. Moved by myself, seconded by the still Ward 10 councillor, Jeffrey Beattie. Removal of speed cushions on Moxley Drive. Yes, Chair Nan, you read that word correctly. Removal. Therefore, be it resolved, A, that the Transportation Division be authorized directed to remove the speed cushions at 44 and 49 Moxley, restore the roadway surface accordingly in a reasonably expedited manner. B, all costs associated with the removal of the existing speed cushions at approximately 44, 49 be approved, funded through my Ward 6 Capital Reinvestment Reserve number noted at an upset limit, including contingency not to exceed $6,000. C, that the General Manager of Public Works City Clerk be authorized directed to execute any required agreements and ancillary documents with such terms, conditions in a form satisfactory to the city solicitor. Chair Nan, a unique set of circumstances has developed ever since that they were installed and approved about 5 years ago on this one block. And I'm being very respectful of the individual as listed in the third whereas paragraph with the unique set of circumstances. Physically, the neighbors rallying around, and given the sensitive matter, I want to thank General Manager Jackie Kennedy and Manager Mike Field for their help in putting this motion together. Seconded by Councillor Beattie. Thank you, Chair Nan.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. It's before committee for electronic vote. Please note for your next motion, you don't have to read out the ancillary document piece. If you don't want to, it's up to you for your consideration. That carries. 10.3, Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chair Nan. Moved by myself, seconded by the Ward 7 Councillor Esther Pauls. Therefore be resolved, A, that the Transportation Division be authorized directed to install, I'm back on track, to install up to 2 speed cushions on East 45th as a traffic calming measure and as part of Transportation Speed Cushions Installation Program. B, that all costs associated with the installation of the traffic calming measures be approved, funded through the usual Ward 6 Capital Reinvestment Reserve number noted at an upset limit, including contingency not to exceed $6,000. And that's where I will end, Chair Nan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson, with all the appropriate pieces after that. Before committee for electronic vote. Thumbs up from Councillor Alex Wilson, and that carries. Thank you. On to 10.4, improvements for lighting for fountain at Gore Park. Over to you, Councillor Crutch.
Thank you. I think if by motion fest, Councillor Jackson probably just meant the diligent hard work of my office staff, but yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for the compliment. I'll pass it on. First motion in the fest is an improvement to lighting for fountain at Gore Park. And so this is just to make sure that they're illuminated because right now they're not. And this was something that staff worked on with the BIA. That's pretty much the entire motion. It's just about providing some funding for lighting of the fountain so that it looks nicer. My seconder is Councillor Alex Wilson.
Thank you. There's no speakers. It's before committee for electronic vote. And that carries. Number 2 in said festival. Councillor Crutch.
This is what a fence at the Wellington alleyway north. The issue here specifically is that there was a property purchased and alleyway sold, and what ended up happening is portion of the alleyway got sold to a private property owner and the city owns another portion. And so this has been a long protracted discussion about getting the private property owner to agree that we can put a fence in a space that will close the alleyway off from their private property at the end of this alleyway, which goes to nowhere, by the way. So it's not like we're not closing an alleyway, we're just putting a fence in a place where the end of the alleyway is to demarcate it from the private property. Residents here have been asking for this for, I think, 7 years now. So we've been working through this since I've been a councillor. It's been a while. Glad we're finally here. This is to fund that. And the seconder is Councillor Nan.
It's before committee for electronic vote. Thumbs up from Councillor Jackson. Councillor McMeekin.
Yep. Trying hard here.
Thank you. That carries. Next is, continue, Councillor Cratch.
This is motion 10.6 in Strawn Linear Park fencing. Very excited to bring this motion forward. It's a considerable amount of money from the Ward 2 Area Rating Reserve to fence the area along Strong Street. For those who don't know, right now it's in a bit of a bad way. The fencing is quite old and pitched down toward the rail line, and there's a large gap at the end of the rail line. So what happens right now is, though dogs and children and all kinds of folks are there, they can literally run around the fence or right into the rail line. So what this is going to do is close that section of the rail line and then also close a section by the Mary Street Bridge, where unfortunately there's been some assaults and other kinds of issues because of the fence situation there. The goal eventually is to fence it all the way down to Bay Street, and then eventually fence a dog park in at the end. And this is just part of the phased improvements to this area so we can get a park online. So it's exciting because park space is at a huge premium downtown. This gets us a more park space, and this is the first step in a long process. We have to take the old fence out, detangle it from trees. So it's going to take years to do, but I'm glad to get step number 2 done. And my seconder is Councillor Nan.
It's before committee for electronic vote. Thumbs up from Councillor Jackson. Councillor McMeekin also thumbs up. That carries. We're past the halfway mark. Councillor Cratch.
10.7, the installation of bump out at Augusta and James. This is part of a project the city is already completing to install bike facilities here and to narrow the intersection a bit. And so if you can imagine you're walking as a pedestrian down the sidewalk and you're walking across this intersection on James Street South, this will make it shorter so that it's safer for people. It will also mean that cars cannot whip around the corner off of James onto Augusta anymore, right where there's a seniors building. So what I'm doing is funding the other portion of this project, which is to pave from the street down Augusta Street to the edge of the seniors building, because right now they have an interlocking brick surface that's not even or accessible, and frankly is a bit of a nightmare for the seniors who are in the building. And we have, because of the nature of the planters and things that the building has put out, it's actually put, I don't like saying this in public, but you can walk down and see it for yourself, we've positioned a park bench behind a pole here. So for the first time now, we're going to rearrange the entire area, get rid of the planters, put the park benches in place so seniors can actually sit on them in the shade, and make this a much more easy area for people to get around and to manage. So this is also part of a longer project where we're going to look at the safety intersection here to see what can happen with respect to crossing on James here where the big black fence is. And also part of another project that parking is working on to rezone the parking here so that it's not constantly having a situation where restaurant folks who need their deliveries are being made to the seniors building park loading zone area. So this is just part of that process and project, and thanks to staff for working on this over the last couple of years. Also area rating dollars being spent on this.
Thank you, and that's before committee for electronic
Seconded by
vote.
Councillor Kazar.
Thank you, and there's a thumbs up from Councillor Jackson. That carries. Next, Councillor Cratch.
Yes, I believe this is the last motion. And it's a waste receptacle pilot program in Beasley Park, seconded by Councillor Huang. This one's pretty exciting because what's going to happen is
you actually missed 10.8, which is next right now. So this is regarding the water service.
I will say I don't have a copy physically, which is what I was going through, and I just didn't get that one. So it's okay, but I can see it electronically magically, Councillor Jackson, don't worry. The robots have come forward. Just a moment. 10.8. Water service and hose connection for Sunset Cultural Garden at 344 Bay Street North. This motion is also being forwarded from area rating. We came up with a bunch of different solutions here over the years, and we've talked about doing something which we're going to do temporarily, which is provide water to the garden volunteers. For those who don't know the trajectory here, this was not originally saved as a garden. It was on the chopping block to be canceled and gotten rid of as part of a development. A motion was put forward 2 years ago by myself to save this as a permanent cultural garden. This was something that was done by residents from the Beasley neighborhood, the North End, the Central neighborhood. It's a beautiful space in our city. And volunteers have been taking care of it for a long time. Those volunteers are getting older, and it's been more difficult for them to do so. So first thing we've done is we've provided them some water in a big container. But from a long-term perspective, we don't know if these volunteers are going to be able to do that, if it's going to work for them. So we wanted to put some actual physical infrastructure in, put in a hose, spigot, a place for people, the volunteers, to water this area now that it's been made permanent. So that's what this motion will do. My seconder is Councillor Huang. No, it's not. My seconder is Maureen Wilson. Pardon me.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Crutch, seconded by Councillor Maureen Wilson. Before committee for electronic vote, Councillor Jackson, is that going to be a thumbs up?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Everybody else is voting electronically. That carries on to your last one, Councillor Crutch.
Yes, this is 10.9, Waste Receptacle Pilot Program in Beasley Park. This comes out of the downtown subcommittee's work and a long discussion we've had there about different kinds of waste receptacles. And this specific park is, part of it is a cut through between two major arterial roads. And what happens a lot of times is people dump their garbage in the open style garbage cans. So we're going to install Jubilee style cans here, so we can prevent some of that dumping from happening and hopefully also some of the fires that are occurring. Everyone in the Beasley Neighborhood Association and the whole neighborhood has been saying this has been a real concern there. We recognize this is a concern probably in other parts of the city and other parks. That's why it's a pilot program. We want to see if this is actually effective. If we change the style of garbage can, will it reduce the number of issues people are having? But there's cost implications, both from a capital perspective and operating. So it was a one-time pilot project. We're funding this from the area reading reserve for the rest of this calendar year and 2027, so that it will come forward in time for the 2028 budget as a consideration after the pilot program is done. But this will have no budget impact in the budget itself until the 2028 budget when it comes forward. So that's what's happening with this budget item. Thank you. And my seconder is Councillor Huang.
Okay, it's before committee for electronic vote.
Councillor-
And in the case of Councillor Jackson, it's a thumbs up.
Through the chair.
Oh, yes?
Councillor, I want you to, if you could just check the therefore be it resolved in the motion that I printed. Because you said you would fund it through the 2027 operating, and I'm not sure that the motion that's being voted on right now says that.
Director
Through
Graham,
the
to
chair,
answer your
can I,
question.
can I just provide some clarity? So there was a couple different versions of this motion flying around. Where we landed under B, therefore be it resolved, that the operating impacts of 3,500 for 2026 and 14,000 for 2027 be considered for area rating. That would ensure that the portion of 2026 and then the full 2027 is the pilot. We could study the impacts, figure out exact staff resource requirements for this type of model. That wasn't reflected in the update motion that's online. So if that could be adjusted for the minutes, that would be appreciated. So it would just be that the operating impacts of 3,500 for 2026 and 14,000 for 2027 be approved to be funded from the Ward 2 Capital Reinvestment Reserve 108052, and then remove the rest of that sentence.
Thank you so much for clarifying that, Director, and that will be duly noted. And the
That's in
mover,
my final
that was
version
the
I've seen as
original.
well, so it's somewhere in the ether.
Okay, so that will be reflected in the minutes, and that's what we're voting on now. It's area rating dollars. Councillor Jackson, still a thumbs up. That carries on to 10.10. Councillor Huang, for your ward-wide review of active school travel.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Kassar. This is 3 or 4 years in the making, because when I first got in, we talked to the daily school route and talked about the type of work that they would do. And I know I had asked them way back in the day for them to do something in Ward 4, and they have finally got some capacity after working with 1, 9, 10, and 12. So, yay. So this is a therefore be it resolved that a grant for the daily school route be approved to engage Ward 4 schools, so all the schools in Ward 4, and families for a ward-wide review of active school travel that follows their established processes to assess and co-design school routes and provide an actionable report with opportunities for improvement to be outlined in the short-term and long-term plans, and that this work be approved and funded from the Ward 4 Capital Discretionary Account 330230944 at an upset limit, including contingency and HST, not to exceed $100,000, and C is the mayor and city clerk be authorized in the thingies. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor Huang. And no speakers, and it's before committee for electronic vote. Counselor Jackson is a thumbs up on that one.
Counselor Pauls is too.
Oh, thank you, Counselor Pauls. That carries. I'll relinquish the chair to Vice Chair Kassar, and through you, introduce this motion with my seconder being Counselor Huang. With thanks to Director Savetsa and Acting Director Sharma, this road, Grosvenor Avenue North, is rated very poor in its asset condition. Anybody who's happened to walk down there, try to ride a bike down that street or drive down that street, you know exactly what this looks like and feels like. All of the other adjacent roads are being cared for in resurfacing through a motion that was approved by council, I believe, last year. And that contract is currently open, and somehow Grosvenor Road didn't make it onto the list. And through consultation with staff, there is an opportunity to couple this road being integrated into the existing contract that is underway now. And so that is my request to committee, is to approve that that work get coupled with the other Crown Point West roads that are being resurfaced.
Okay.
And that contract also includes Westdale.
Okay, I don't see any speakers, so we'll go to the vote. The vote is up. And that carries 12-0. Back to you.
Thank you, Vice Chair, and thank you, committee members. Over to notices of motion. First up is Victoria Park Decorative Crosswalks. Councillor Maureen Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I will be asking that the rules of order be suspended to allow the introduction of this motion respecting Victoria Park Decorative Crosswalks. This is all on me and certainly not on staff. We have been working on this with the artist and staff for some time, and I apologize to my colleagues for the lateness in getting it. I just missed the deadline.
Okay, and your seconder, Councillor Wilson.
Councillor Crutch, please. Thank you.
Councillor Crutch is a seconder, and that's before committee for electronic vote to first waive the rules, and then we'll entertain the main motion. Councillor Jackson's a thumbs up. That carries. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you very much. As previously stated, we have been working.
At least it's a good song.
Yeah. Lord, all the way. Love her. Thank you very much. As I noted previously, this is to work with an artist who has been commissioned for the purpose of highlighting those raised crosswalks. This is an extremely high pedestrian area, and it intersects with Victoria Park, which if you're a child and or accompanying caregiver, you have to walk across much of the traffic to get there, in and around there. So the intersections are noted as Strathcona Avenue North at Head, Strathcona Avenue North at Lamoureux, Strathcona Avenue North at Florence, and Florence at Inchbury. It is from the Ward 1 Capital Discretionary Account. Thank you.
Thank you. It's going to look really pretty down there. And your seconder was Councillor Crutch for this one as well, right?
Yes,
okay. Before committee for electronic vote. Councillor Jackson is indicating a thumbs. Oh, wow. Carries. 11.2 has been withdrawn. On to 11.3, installation of speed cushions as a traffic calming measure on Wavell Avenue in Ward 8. Councillor Cooper, could you please introduce your notice of motion? I understand you're suspending the rules, so if you could couple both of those and your seconder, please.
Thank you, Chair. And this is something we've been working on for a little while, and I am requesting to suspend the rules. And just as a summary, Willville Avenue is used basically as a shortcut, and there's a lot of concerns in the neighborhood around the children and their safety. And as I have on here, we have it's contingent on a petition being signed. We do have that petition now signed, confirmed by Mike Fields, and so it's before you right now, the amount not to exceed $3,000.
Thank you so much. And your seconder for waiving the rules?
Thank you, Councillor Beatty.
Thank you. And we'll vote on that first, waiving the rules, and then on the motion as described by Councillor Cooper. Councillor Jackson has a thumb up. That carries. And then on the motion before committee for electronic vote. Just waiting for the vote. Yep, it's up. That carries. And then Councillor Cooper, if you want to do the same for the next one, 11.4.
Thank you, Chair. This has also been one that we've been working on for a period of time. So there's a number of projects that have been wrapped up or wrapping up, and we have some opportunities here to liberate this. I mean, we're working with Director Graham and her team and around how we can have the biggest impact in the parks in Ward 8. And Buchanan Park, Bruce Park, we're looking to put in new play structures, also to ensure we make these accessible. With respect to Bruce Park, we're also looking to renew the baseball diamonds as well. And with respect to Norwalk Park, looking to have a new play structure and ensure it's accessible. So, and we're going to be putting a path into Kennedy East Park as well. So it comes out to about $2.1 million. And my seconder would be Councillor Beatty on this. I do want to thank Director Graham and her team for all the work they did to make this happen. And I was very much appreciated.
Thank you. No further speakers on the speakers list, so some amendments to previously approved and then new allocations as well. Councillor Cooper, for your parks in Ward 8 before committee for electronic vote. And that carries on to installation of digital speed. Oh, sorry, that was the motion to suspend the rules. Now we got to vote on the motion for the parks. So it's same mover and seconder. Councillor Jackson has a big thumbs up. And also carried. Okay, now on to 11.4. Councillor Alex Wilson.
Seeking to waive the rules as this is a time-sensitive motion due to the use of ward-specific funding as the funding source. And my seconder for both waiving the rules and the main motion will be Councillor Wang.
Yep. And did you want to say anything on the main motion as well? Because giving you the opportunity to do that now.
It's about road safety and happy to do that if the rules are waived. This has been kind of reviewed by the team. It came back as not warranted, but a petition of 65% of residents who filled out the survey asked for this. It's in the rural roadways, so speed cushions are not a tool in our toolbox, and this would be for dynamic speed signs instead, which were the recommended solution by staff.
Thank you so much. So first up is a vote electronically to suspend the rules. Councillor Jackson has a thumbs up. Vote is loading. And that carries. And then on the motion as described by Councillor Wilson, committee is before you for electronic vote, and a thumbs up from Councillor Jackson. And I read it into the record as 11.4. It was actually 11.5.
Councillor Wilson.
That carries. And then 11.6, installation of digital speed signs on Patterson Road. Councillor Wilson. Oh, wait, you know what? It's written down incorrectly. My bad. 11.6 is actually portable toilets at the Upper Red Hill Park. We've already dealt with your motion squarely. Oh, and then that one's been withdrawn from Ward 9. Okay, onwards. Thank you, everyone, for being here for so long. We're trying to wrap this up by 4:30. We almost did it. We got to 4:41. Thank you to all the public that participated, for your delegations in the public hearing, to all the staff for your preparation of reports and response to questions and deliberation. Thank you, committee members. Thank you also to legislative team as well. Thank you, everyone. We are adjourned.